On this end, Jordan. And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Tuesday, March 12th. I am Josh Engleman. I'm joined by DK. We're brought to you by BetMGM. 7-game slate ahead of us. Interesting slate. 7:30 tip-off. 2 games at 8. Game at 8:30. Another 9. 2 late-night hammers at 10 o'clock. Lots to talk about. We've had a little bit of news throughout the day. Celtics mixed it up a little bit. Should be fun to break it all down. Hopefully, I can personally carry some momentum into this slate. Maybe DK will carry some in from Friday. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow us both on Twitter. What's going on, man? How are you?
Good. I think this is shaping up to be a pretty good 7-game slate. Memphis will be a bit of a headache, but we'll talk about that. I saw you came close to winning the big tournament last night.
Yeah, didn't have enough dick in my life, unfortunately. Yeah. Needed more dick.
Needed a little more dick. It's all right.
We've all been there, or at least I've been there for 39 years. But look, it happens. What are you going to do? It would have been nice. I thought I was going to lose money. I went to bed expecting my lineups to be garbage. Shout out to Peyton Pritchard. Shout out to Hauser for going crazy. And then shout out to, I guess, MPJ, who was like my most unique piece. And he was the lowest owned guy that I had in that lineup. It's a little bit more of a separator for me. But, you know, we're good. We're good. It was fun. You and I have been in pretty good shape from the long weekend of Friday to Monday.
Yeah, no, it's been going well. And that slate was a fun one because that was a slate where, late swapping was key. There's a lot of guys that, were good plays going into the slate and then things changed. The Warriors starting lineup, the Raptors starting lineup. So I always prefer slates like that because if you're on top of things, I think it gives you a bigger edge.
Yeah, I would live for that. I don't look forward to Friday when you don't have that same ability. It's the best in the world to be able to make those swaps. That's where the money's at, folks. That's where the money's at. But for now, we break down today's slate. Some of these games are disgusting, including the first thing we're going to talk about, the Philadelphia 76ers. 6-point dogs in New York, 208 total. Welcome back, Tyrese Maxey. He's been out for the past 4 games, making his return now today to a very uninteresting spot. 1% ownership. That's the highest you get to anybody on the Philadelphia 76ers, unless you're playing on FanDuel, at which point you can get 2% owned Kelly Oubre or 2% owned Tobias Harris. Highest owned or highest optimal rate for anybody on Philly is 4.5% to Tyrese Maxey. Are you seeing this any different? Do you have any spots you want to get to for the Sixers?
It's pretty tough because a lot of these guys are priced up from when Maxey has been out. Like Maxey's been out for a few games now. And now you got Tyrese Maxey back, and he's obviously a pretty high usage player. So I feel like a lot of these guys are overpriced, like Harris and Oubre and Hield and Lowry. So pretty hard to get to any of those guys. Campaign definitely can't get to him. Tyrese Maxey is sub 9K, so I think he's like playable as a contrarian option. Right now, he's getting no ownership. Just keep an eye on the news. I don't think he's gonna be on a limit. It was just concussion, so I assume he'll be good to go back to his normal like high 30s minutes or so. So no 1%. Yeah, I guess you could have a little bit of interest in Tyrese Maxey. And then I've mentioned him, the last few times on these streams. Paul Reed, he hasn't been starting. They've been starting Mo Bamba the last couple games, so Paul Reed has closed each of the last 2 games. The Knicks they are, a team that usually has a traditional center out there at all times. So I feel like more likely you get the full 48 with Reed and Bamba. And Reed does have the power forward eligibility. So I think really for me, it would just be Maxey and Paul Reed as contrarian plays. And again, right now they're getting no ownership.
I got to one single share of Paul Reed and nothing else for Philly. And I assume that could go away when I run my lineups in the future, or in like just simply it becomes a share of Maxey, a share of Tobias Harris. It's just really bleak. It's a very uninteresting slate for the Philadelphia 76ers. I have nothing else to add here. I'd love to do it. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah, I think there's really not much else to mention. I think, and on the other side too is pretty gross as well.
It is indeed. The New York Knicks are on the opposite side. They are getting OG Anunoby back for the first time in north of a month. No Julius Randle, no Mitchell Robinson at this point. Jalen Brunson back, seeming fine. 3% owned Jalen Brunson, I might add. 5% ownership to Josh Hart. 10% to Dante DiVincenzo. How do the Knicks look different to you?
They don't look much different than the 76ers. I don't have a ton of interest. I'm a little bit surprised DiVincenzo's still getting 10%. I mean, he is sub 7K, but this is a pretty gross spot. I mean, the last time these two teams played a couple days ago, it was 79 to 73, which is the lowest score I mean I can remember in a long time. So, ugly game here. OG Anunoby's back. You ready for OG to come back after like 2 months and play like 40 minutes?
It's going to happen, I'm sure. I didn't know how to project. I started at 30 today. I started bumping it up a little bit further. If it were any other team, you'd be like, oh, they're going to bring him back gently. And then you're like, oh, well, Tibbs is the coach of the Knicks, so might play 44 and not be surprised. But my guess is that we don't see too much of him. Enough. I don't think we see enough of him for him to matter.
Yeah, like I don't think he's going to come out and I mean, I guess it's possible, but he would need to play like high 30s minutes, I think, for him to be in play. I don't think he's going to get that in his first game. The minutes on Achua have been up recently, 39 and 36 minutes. But again, with OG back, I think those minutes should tick down. Obviously, DiVincenzo and Hartman playing a ton as well, but I don't know. This team is just pretty unappealing as well. It is the early game too, and we have some news we are still waiting for in the late game. So all in all, this game is basically a full fade for me.
I've got a little bit of Dante DiVincenzo, but I've been projecting him a little bit better than most as of late. He is the most owned guy here. He does have the highest optimal rate in our boom bust tool. He's at around 10%. He's the highest owned guy on FanDuel. I only have him at 1.05 DraftKings points per minute in this spot in 35 minutes. I don't know if it's just the position that allows me to get to him. I certainly probably am north. We have him at 35 fantasy points. I have 37. Those 2 points are carrying a lot of weight right now, but I don't mind having a little piece of this. Does concern me a little bit just because of what swaps we might have later on tonight, but we'll see where we end up on DiVincenzo. He is I don't want to say priority, but sort of my favorite of this first game, my GPP option that I'm getting to.
Yeah, he's probably in this game the easiest guy to get to with the eligibility and price point and the minutes. But again, I don't know if I want to go there because I feel like I want to have as much flexibility as possible for some of these later games.
Yeah, I don't blame that strategy at all. And I did get to a little bit of Brunson, sort of the same situation here. He's not a guy that I mind getting to, especially if it's not out of the realm of possibility for him to play really big minutes here. He was obviously playing 37, 38 pretty regularly. That's not at all what I have him in for today. I only gave him 35. I think the upside of 38 is certainly there. So I do kind of like him as a GPP flyer, but I have limited exposure to him. He's not really pulling much ownership, so it's not like it's a giant stand. But I do have a little bit of Brunson as well. Maybe a couple shares of Josh Hart. I don't know if OG coming back means instead of playing 44 minutes, he plays 40, but still 7,200. Reasonable play because he's going to be out there. But as they start to get these dudes back, those minutes are going to come back down.
Yeah, I'm just expecting, Hart and DiVincenzo and all these guys to lose a few minutes with OG back. But you never know. I mean, Tibbs could be crazy and just keep playing these guys same minutes and just boot Bogdanovich or boot Burks in the rotation or something.
Yeah, I mean, they don't seem very happy to have Alec Burks on the team, which I don't know, not the first time that Alec Burks has not been liked in a rotation by Tibbs. I don't know why they got him back, but it's like the front office was like, oh, that's a pretty good move. We can get Alec Burks for a decent value. And Tibbs was like, I'm good. We're not shorthanded at all. I have no need to give this man any minutes.
Yeah, that's we've talked about it before, but it's just a shock that right now he's like basically almost out of the rotation.
Yeah. It's like they're playing 7. They're playing Josh Hart 44 minutes a game. So you can't play, Alec Burks can't play 16 minutes without destroying you. Is that what you're trying to say? It's apparently what he's trying to say.
Yep.
All right, let's put a pin. Let's get rid of this game now, and let's get to one that we actually have to talk about quite a bit more. What in the world? That's an interesting set of exposures for me on the Washington Wizards. Apparently, I'm fading the Wizards. Let's have this conversation.
Okay.
Washington Wizards 2.5-point favorites in Memphis, 219 total. No Marvin Bagley, no Rashawn Holmes, so we're losing centers at a pretty quick rate. Still no Landry Shamet and no Isaiah Livers. 40% ownership coming into Corey Kispert, small forward, power forward eligible, 5K. 30% ownership coming into an 8K Kyle Kuzma. 20% ownership coming into Tyus Jones. Another 15 to Denny Avdia. Another 10 to Bilal Coulibaly. I'm just throwing it to you to start. Where are you going for Washington? Because I am fading these guys in such an aggressive manner that it makes me think that I forgot to type their numbers in.
Okay. So yeah, for Washington, again, you got no Bagley, no Holmes. So I'm assuming they're going to go with that same starting lineup last game with Kuzma at the 5, where they go Tyus and Kispert and Coulibaly and Denny and Kuzma. And in that game, the minutes, every single starter played 35 plus minutes, 36 minutes for Coulibaly, 39 for Kispert, 35 for Denny, 38 for Kuzma, 38 for Tyus. The only guy that played over or more than 11 minutes off the bench was Jordan Poole. So they were in a very, very tight rotation. I don't think we get that tight of rotation again, but I think it's likely that all these starters get 30 plus minutes for sure. I think Kuzma would probably be my preferred option here at 8K. Again, he looks a little bit better when he does play the 5. Rebound numbers obviously go up for him and Denny. So I'm fine getting to Kuzma there at 8K. I will say, I think Corey Kispert is going way over owned right now at 40%.
Yeah.
I would rather eat dirt than play 40% owned Corey Kispert. Like, I'm just not going to do that. If he goes out there and beats me, so be it. But I'm really surprised right now he's getting that much ownership. Because I think there's a lot of other plays in that range I would just much rather get to, but you should get 30 plus minutes from him. The issue is, I think like last game was a bit of an outlier. He went for 22, 6, and 5. So I'm definitely not on Kispert. So can't wait for a career game from him. The other options for Washington, Tyus at 20% also feels like he's going a little bit over owned. Denny at about 15%, I think is reasonable. Poole, first bad game I think he's had in a bit. Well, I guess, yeah. He only played 23 minutes. Before that, though, 32 and 34 minutes. So I think Poole is a little bit interesting as a contrarian play. He's right now getting no ownership. And we've seen the ceiling from him, coming back from the All-Star break. He's been a different player. So at 4%, I think he's a bit of a interesting, GPP play. But yeah, I think Kuzma is the guy that I'm the most okay to eating that ownership. The other guys then going over owned, especially Corey Kispert.
I have 0 shares of Corey Kispert right now. That's staggering to see. Now, if a new ownership run comes out and he's 30% owned, I wouldn't be surprised if I then have 10 or something, and that starts to stabilize a little bit. I also have 2% of Kyle Kuzma. Now, Kyle Kuzma, 21% optimal, 30% owned. Kispert, 24% optimal, 40% owned. We are seeing pretty sizable negative leverage. Under on Tyus Jones as well. It's not that I don't think that these guys grade out as good plays, because they certainly do. And, maybe this is a case where I need to just throw an extra minute on every one of them. Like, I'm a little too pessimistic. And even if I do that, it's not as if I'm just going to be drowning in these Wizards guys. It just might bring me a little bit closer to normal. But right now, I'm neutral to Denny and I'm neutral to Coulibaly. But the guys that are pulling heavy ownership, it feels like it's just a little too high for a 7-game slate.
Yeah, and also, I think they're probably going to extend the bench a little bit more in this game. I think, Omorie probably plays more than the 3 minutes he got last game, or Patrick Baldwin. One of those guys I think will get extended a bit more. So I don't think we can expect the same type of rotation we got last game from Washington.
I hope that that's the case. I hope they stretch this bench out like crazy if these are going to be my exposures. In a cash game, you're probably playing Kyle Kuzma and Corey Kispert in everything you build. I can't really disagree with it. from a cash perspective. And it's sort of the same situation on FanDuel. 40% ownership to Kispert, 20 to Denny, and then right around 15 to Koulibaly, Poole, Kuzma, and Tyus Jones. Like the ownership is there across the board. And like obviously it's a completely different site, prices, whatever. It just feels more correct on FanDuel than it does on DraftKings. Like it's just a little bit of a haircut to all these dudes. And it's just like, okay, that I think I would rather be a little bit lighter. But then again, this matchup against Memphis, I mean, Washington sucks. We all know that. This Memphis team, extra special, sucks. They're 3 points worse per 100 possessions than Washington on offense. And that assumes that's counting like a lot of the times where Jaren Jackson was playing and some of the other guys that were healthy earlier in the year. Not to mention, they're a top 10 defense. They're not a top 10 defense when Jaren Jackson isn't around. So like this matchup on paper is fantastic for Washington. I could not be more scared of what I'm getting for Washington right now.
Yeah, I mean, we're both on the Corey Kispert fade, so you already know he's going to go for like 50 tonight and just end our nights early.
Yep.
But yeah, like I think there's some plays that look okay for the ownership, and some I think are way over owned. It'll be interesting to see when we get an ownership update because I feel like some of these guys could drop a little bit.
I hope that they do, because I would like to just flatten this out a little bit and not have a ridiculously like if Washington sucks, I'm probably going to have a really good night, but that's going to be an interesting sweat from 8 o'clock till 10 o'clock until like most of their points are hashed out.
Yeah, you'll be. Are you going to be on playback sweating that one out?
Maybe. I would have hopped back on playback last night if I had any concept of being able to like be successful, but I didn't think that was going to happen, so I didn't even bother. But if Washington sucks out of the gate, that might be good because I've got a bit of a stand on the Memphis Grizzlies. However, we kind of need a little bit of news. Let's start with the guys that are out. Desmond Bane, Brandon Clark, Jaren Jackson, John Morant, Derrick Rose, Marcus Smart, Yuta Watanabe, Vince Williams, Zaire Williams. Scottie Pippen Jr. is doubtful. Jordan Goodwin, questionable. John Conchar, questionable. Lamar Stevens, questionable. Wenyen Gabriel might be in a different country. 10% ownership to Gigi Jackson, to Jake LaRavia, to Luke Kennard, to Santi Aldama. Single digits to everybody else. We do see Lamar Stevens, Kennard, and Aldama get to the 20s on FanDuel. I have a fairly large stand on Luke Kennard. I have a fairly large stand on Santi Aldama. I'm certainly getting to the other pieces of this game, including Wenyen Gabriel. Do we want to just get this one out of the way first?
Yeah, we got to talk about it. So Wenyen Gabriel signed with a Puerto Rican team yesterday. So I don't know for sure if he's going to be available. I think the most likely case is he finishes out his 10-day contract and then goes to play for that team. But I'm going to keep a close eye on that on Twitter because there's a chance he doesn't play since he signed that contract with a Puerto Rican team.
So I assume he would rather finish the 10-day than immediately go to Puerto Rico. I have to assume he makes more money on a 10-day than he would in Puerto Rico.
Yes.
So you would think he's at least playing out the string on that 10-day contract.
Yeah, I think so. And it's pretty important news because you have a lot of guys questionable. And if a lot of these questionable guys don't play, like this team could be extremely shorthanded. I believe I did the math, like I counted it. And if all the questionable players don't play, they'll only have 7. So like at least one of these guys has to play. And then that also depends on if Gabriel's available or not. Like maybe 2 of them have to play.
Yeah, that gets really tricky. So like, let's just say that if they have 7 active, you guys need to be aware one of those guys that gets ruled out will also be considered active for the game. They have to have 8 active bodies, even if we get the announcement that those Q tags end up out. I can almost promise you Jordan Goodwin won't be the guy named as active if he's out, because that will then give him a day to his 2-way contract. If he's not active, he won't get that added appearance for his 2-way. So if Goodwin's out, he won't be the fake guy. That much I know. But it does get really bleak here. I don't know what a Dejan Giroux is. I already have him in for 18 minutes. He's 5,200. I don't even know what to make of that. That was a completely made up name when I started doing my prep earlier today. Let's talk about the things that I think are the easiest to talk about. Luke Kennard, Santi Aldama, no injury designation. They're two real people that are in their rotation when they're healthy. I'm very happy to get to these guys. If Luke Kennard and Santi Aldama are both 10% owned, like, should Corey Kispert be 40 if Luke Kennard is 10?
No, I'm totally in agreement with you. Like, I would much rather have those two at their ownerships than 40% Corey Kispert. And I was taking a look at some rates. It's coming back from All-Star break with Jaren and Vince Williams off the court. GG Jackson's leading the way in usage, 32% usage. In their most recent game, he played 38 minutes as well. He started. They had 9 guys available in that game. He also closed in a blowout. So that does, make me feel a little bit better about GG Jackson. Is like, even if the game gets out of hand, I think there's a chance he plays, he closes in the blowout. And then Laravia has actually been second in the team in usage, about 30% usage rate. He did deal with a bit of foul trouble last game, but I think he would probably play, I don't know, like close to 30 minutes if the game stays competitive. You already mentioned Aldama and Kennard. I think they're going a bit under-owned. You got Aldama, both of them around 10%. Like, everyone's around, all their main guys are around 10% here. So
yeah,
I think I'm higher on the Grizzlies right now than the field, but also it will depend on news. Like, this team could be really appealing if they're down to like 7 or 8 guys, because it's a good matchup against the Wizards and they would just be out of bodies. Is there anyone else? I mean, Trey Jemison's 4.1. He could be playable as well. It just, keep a close eye on it. Conchar, Stevens, and Goodwin are all questionable. Again, I think at least one of those guys has to play.
I'm getting Wenyen Gabriel right now, 3,600 center only. I have a little bit of Trey Jamison. He's 4,100 center only. Like, these guys are in play to me already and could be in like extra special play if this breaks the wrong way. Do you have any leans here? It's funny to think about their last game. The leading minutes player, as you mentioned, was GG Jackson. He's questionable today. So that's one, right? He is? No, he's not.
No, he's
GG
not.
Jackson.
It's Conchar, Lamar Stevens, and Goodwin.
We got 28 minutes out of Triple J. He's out. The other 28 minutes went to Dejan Giroux. Not that you and I have any confidence in projecting him. It's the first appearance he's ever made. 30 minutes went to Lamar Stevens. He's questionable. It's like, all right, well, we're looking at a team that's got a bunch of Q tags to even the guys that, or they're already out, to the guys that played the last game. They're down to nothing. They are down to absolutely nothing.
Yeah, like, I think probably at least 1 or 2 of these questionable players will play. I think Stevens is, like they said, it's like left abductor soreness. I think he probably plays. Goodwin and Conchar missed the most recent game, right? Yeah, so I think they're more 50-50. And
Goodwin's still butting up against that 2-day list. So like,
exactly.
I assume he's like more break in case of emergency today.
Yeah, he would be someone, though, that if he's available and he starts, I actually would be pretty high on him at 5.4. Right now he's getting no ownership, but the last few games he's been active, he started, and if he starts, I think you'd probably give him, high 20s minutes or so. So if he's available and he's in, I actually would like him right now with no ownership.
This is a wild scenario for a team.
This is your classic like late season NBA, right?
This might honestly be the worst I've ever seen. I can't picture a time where so many, like, their entire main rotation isn't playing today. Desmond Bane, main rotation. Brandon Clark has been out for the whole year. He is a main rotation piece for the Memphis Grizzlies. Triple J, obviously. Morant, obviously. Marcus Smart, obviously. I think Vince Williams now is going to be a part of their rotation moving forward. Let's call that 6. Say what you want about Zaire Williams at this point. I don't think Derrick Rose was going to be getting a lot, but like, they are missing 180 of their real minutes. And that says nothing for like the next guys up that are also already out.
Yeah, there's only like 1 or 2 like rotation players playing for them right now. It's Kennard and like maybe Aldama.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
that's it. None of like, I think GG Jackson has a future in Memphis, but who knows what that looks like when they're at full strength. It's rough, man. It's rough. But I want to get to Memphis. If Washington is going to pull this much ownership and Memphis is 2.5-point dogs, I'm intrigued in Memphis at 10% owned dudes. But at the same time, if this were a 100,000 person field, I'd be very excited for those guys to get ruled out and be able to get those swaps. On a day like today, there's going to be a little bit less utility. It's going to be a bit of a sharper field in the large field GPP on DK. But either way, we might have the opportunity to swap to significantly more value if this breaks correctly. But I'm going out. I'm saying right now, I'm going to have Luke Kennard and Santi Aldama regardless of that news.
Yeah, it would be wild. We're kind of lucky this is an early game. It would be wild if this was like a late night hammer or something. We just had like no idea what was going on.
That would, oh my God, it'd be insane. Do you have anything else you want to add here from Memphis?
No, like I think just keep an eye on the news. This team's shorthanded. It could be very shorthanded. So feeling spot. I think a lot of the main guys are going under-owned, and I think we're in agreement. We're pretty high in Memphis. I do expect that if some of these guys end up getting ruled out and they only like 8 active players, the ownership will rise. But right now, I think a lot of these main guys look pretty good.
Schedule for the rest of the day. You only get to hear it if you hit the like button. I'll assume that was the sound of all of you guys doing that. NBA Live Before Lock coming up next at 6:30. They'll take you all the way to 7:30. And then you get myself and Greg back for playback. Go to playback.tv/stochastic. Come hang out with us. You watch the games along with us. We'll talk DFS late swap news. We'll talk live bets. Might do a giveaway for Odds Shopper on the first basket of that Sixers-Knicks game. Been doing that a lot lately. If you have League Pass, great. Load your League Pass up. You watch the exact same stream as us. We're all there, chopping it up, cracking jokes, having fun watching basketball. If you don't have League Pass, we have 40 VIP passes that we can hand out to the lovely people that join us. So maybe you'll get lucky and grab a VIP pass, or maybe you'll end up with a free week or something of Odds Shopper. All told, it's a good hang. You should join us. Link in chat. Also, use our avatar. Go to stochastic.com/avatar. Grab that logo. DraftKings, FanDuel, Owner's Box, Yahoo. If you finish in the top 3 of a contest with 5,000 or more entries, you can get yourself 1 month of whichever package you want at Stochastic, as long as it's not the all sports package. You want the NBA Sims Max package? You get it for a month. $200 value. Covers everything. And all we need you to do is tweet your result at Stochastic HOF. We want to see the lineup. We want to see the logo. Show us the contest as well. We'll let the people know how well you succeeded that night before, and then we'll hook you up with a little extra something. Costs you nothing. $0. Don't have to be a sub to us. But that could be your way that you get in the door. Indiana Pacers, 6-point dogs in OKC, 241 total. Big time offense in this one. Number 2 offense in Indy, number 4 offense in OKC. Around 10% ownership to Miles Turner, Pascal Siakam, TJ McConnell, a little bit less for Halliburton, Jalen Smith, Aaron Nesmith. I almost said Aaron Smith, but you know what I mean. What do you like here for Indy? Difficult spot, but a couple interesting plays.
Yeah, I mean, relatively high total. I was taking a look at some rates for the Pacers since returning from break. It's actually been Miles Turner and TJ McConnell leading the way in usage, both around 25%. I think with the way that TJ McConnell's been playing, it's kind of hurt Halliburton a bit. I mean, he played 27 minutes in the most recent game. Like his minutes have been a little bit up and down. I don't really know what to do with McConnell because like he is a good point per minute player, but I just don't know what to project for his minutes right now. Not getting a ton of ownership, so like he's a little bit interesting for tournaments. I think Siakam's probably the easiest guy to get to. Price has come down on him, 7.3K. I think you're probably getting around like 35 or so minutes in a competitive game. He's probably like your easiest guy, small forward, power forward eligibility. I do have a little bit interest still in Halliburton. Again, he's been struggling a bit, but the minutes have slowly ticked up. For a long stretch of time, he was playing like 28 to 30 minutes. 3 of the last 4 games, 36, 37, and 36 minutes. So I think he's a little bit interesting at about 5% ownership. Miles Turner getting about 10%, as you mentioned. He's always a guy that I'm like kind of indifferent on, usually hovers around 30 or so minutes. They can fluctuate a little bit because Carlisle control at times and, go to a little bit more Jalen Smith. And then I'll mention Jalen Smith. He missed the most recent game with an illness, but the previous 2 games, 18 and 20 minutes. Again, he is playing the backup 5 and he does have power forward eligibility and he is a good point per minute player. So he's always someone I'm interested in when he's low owned. Right now, only projected for about 3%. So I do like him or getting overweight to him at his current ownership.
So Pascal Siakam is the guy that I'm getting the most of, but just a little bit above the field. I'm mostly just holding hands with the field, with Siakam, with Turner, with Toppin, with TJ McConnell. I got a share of Halliburton. I got one of Nesmith. I got a little bit of Jalen Smith. No overwhelming priorities from Indy because I think that defensive matchup is a little tough, but they have enough quality options. And the implied total for Indy at 117.5 just crushed my elbow on the side of my desk. the implied total really helps out here. So if this becomes the offensive game that it can be, it will be nice to have some of these pieces from Indy, but I don't see anybody that I'm overwhelmingly getting to. I'm with you that Pascal Siakam seems like the easiest body to grab.
Yeah, and then the only other thing to mention is with Mathurin, he's been out for the last couple games. He's out for the season. Naismith has seen an increase in minutes, 30 and 37 minutes over the last couple games. I just think it's kind of tough to get to him right now at 5.4, though.
I agree. I gave him that bump and got him back to that range that he was at before his injury. He's 5,300 small forward, power forward on FanDuel, 10% owned there. Probably a little bit better of a play, but he's kind of appropriately priced right now.
Yep, agree.
OKC is like Memphis for me. I got a ton of these dudes. 10% owned SGA, 10% owned Dort, 10% owned Giddey, 10% owned Jalen Williams, 10% owned Chet. We're still waiting on official word for Jalen Williams, but he did go through shoot around. I am smashing Oklahoma City in this spot. 24% of Chet, 36% of Jalen Williams, 12 to Giddey. A number so high for Lou Dort that I don't want to say it out loud, and 22% of SGA. I'm getting to every single thing here from the OKC starting lineup because this is the number 25 ranked defense, the number 1 team in pace. It's about as good of a spot as Oklahoma City can get.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised these guys aren't getting more ownership. So tend to agree with you there. I think Jalen Williams is probably my favorite play here. He did go through shoot around, so I'm fully expecting him to play. He's in competitive games. He's usually playing, low to mid 30s minutes. The usage has been up on him as well. Sub 7K price point. I think he's probably my preferred option. SGA and Chet obviously both have a pretty high ceiling as well. No issue getting to either of those guys. Lou Dort, I'm not as high on. I think there's other value plays in that range. We'll talk about, some of these Boston guys. I think Memphis possibly if a few of those guys sit as well. We'll talk about Dylan Brooks too, who I think is a pretty good value. So I think there's other guys in that range that Dort's in that I would rather get to, but I'm not going to say no if you want to go to Lou Dort. Giddey is someone that, the minutes are just kind of all over the place for him, but he is a good point per minute player. Last game was a blowout, so he probably would have played more than the 19 that he got. Yeah. He's someone that I would rather play at low ownership as opposed to high ownership. And right now he's sub 10%. So I think Giddey is a good tournament play too, because if he gets the game where he plays, 25 plus minutes, he could smash that price point. I don't think I'm going to consider anyone on the bench just for the way that Dagnall runs rotations. But all 5 starters I think are in play here. I think Jalen Williams and Giddey probably my preferred options.
As of right now, the Oklahoma City Thunder are my second most exposed team on today's slate.
Yeah, I think
that works for me at their current ownership. Yeah, I don't, when I look at this, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm very happy to get the team with the highest implied total on today's slate against one of the worst defenses in a game that should be an absolute track meet. Like, all of this checks out. I feel like I'm doing something wrong here. I almost want to bet on, I want to like parlay the unders of all these OKC guys, because I just feel like I've got a different look on this game. But I want all things Oklahoma City. I mean, we have pretty positive leverage on Josh Giddey, sizable positive leverage on Lou Dort, no minutes limit on Maxey. We have SGA and Jalen Williams both getting over 10% in optimal rate. I'm just happy to get this matchup against the Pacers.
Yeah, I think at the current ownerships, that they're definitely a team that I'm with you. I would prefer getting overweight too.
Anything else you want to touch on for OKC?
No, I think we're ready to move on to a team that I have a lot of interest in Houston.
Yeah, tough team to talk about here. Houston Rockets, 3-point favorites in San Antonio, 222 total. They are going to be without Cam Whitmore and, more importantly, without Alperen Şengün. Luckily, not more injured than just the aggressive sprain, so that's great. Should be fine coming back for next year. But that is creating all sorts of value for this Houston team. 38% ownership coming into Dylan Brooks, 30 to Amin Thompson, 30 to Fred VanVleet, around 15 for Jabari Smith and Jalen Green. It's even more crazy on FanDuel. Jalen Green is 53% owned on FanDuel. Jeff Green is 35% owned on FanDuel. Wild stuff. But I'm eating a lot of this chalk, except for one player. Let's start with the guy that's most owned. Is it Dylan Brooks season for you today?
Unfortunately, I think he's a pretty good value play. Expecting him to play 30 plus minutes. He is Let me bring it up. One sec. It was loading. So Brooks with Şengün off the court this year, he's 0.85 fantasy point per minute player. So I think he stands out as one of like the safer values in the slate. I do expect him to be defending Wembanyama at times, so that does worry me a little bit because he is foul prone. But yeah, sadly, I do like Dylan Brooks as a value play. And then I was a little bit surprised looking at these numbers last night. Jalen Green with Şengün off the court has
I'm so excited for you to say this.
36% usage rate.
Yeah.
That is absurd. I was looking at that. I was like, did I do something wrong? Is there like a glitch? I was like, what? 36% usage.
I started with those numbers just like a little bit tweak. Like I always go a little bit lighter than what I see. So when I saw it, I entered that in and then I started cross-referencing with props. I was like, well, I guess I can't use that number, but it's interesting to know that it gets there.
Yeah, and it's a pretty large sample size too.
Yeah.
Like it's like over 300 minutes. So yeah, the price is up on Green, but I think he's still firmly in play. The assist numbers look better for Van Fleet, 34% assist percentage with Şengün off the court. So yeah, this is a team that I really, really like. Van Fleet sub 30%, I think stands out as a really good play. Jalen Green only getting about 14%. I think he stands as a pretty good play. I think my favorite play though on Houston is going to be Jabari Smith. Right now, only getting 13% ownership. I expect him to play a lot at the 5. My expectation is you're going to get Jeff Green in the starting lineup. So if that's the case, like I'm way higher on Jabari Smith. We've seen games where he plays, where Houston plays a bit more small ball. That's where we see those, big Jabari Smith games. So I think factoring in ownership, he's by far my favorite play in Houston.
Yeah, I've got 22% of him right now. I do think that we'll see a decent chunk of him at the 5, although maybe that's not today just because of Wemby being a bit of a unicorn on the opposite side. Not that like it matters. They're not guarding Wemby with like a traditional big as if that matters. You're going to see a lot of Jeff Green. You're going to see a lot of Dylan Brooks on him. Like you got to send doubles. They don't have the body types to deal with him just in a one-on-one manner. He's just going to be like bloop. It's going to be like playing against middle school kids.
Right.
So I like the Jabari Smith shout. I'm getting over the field there. I'm getting over the field on Jalen Green. I think I have a higher projection on Jalen Green than most because of that gigantic usage rate that has at least been observed. I'm neutral to Van Vliet. I'm way over on Dylan Brooks. I'm not getting Amen Thompson though.
That's the guy I was going to ask you about because I'm a little bit. I think he's going a bit overowned. Now the thing with Amen Thompson is he actually is a good point per minute player, but is he going to see like a big uptick in minutes here? I'm not so sure.
He can.
So, yeah, he definitely can. But he is one right now at his ownership. I think I would be more likely to get underweight too. So yeah, I'm not as high in Thompson. I don't think I can get to Jeff Green either. Like I think his price is too high in DraftKings. Like I played, when was it? It was a Millie Maker like a month ago or 2 months ago. And I played Jeff Green. That was a game where I think Şengün was out. And he played 20 first half minutes and had 2 fantasy points.
I remember that day, actually.
Yep. I just lit like $2,500 on fire. So that was no fun. But yeah, I don't think at his price point, right? Like if he was like in the low 3K range, then I think he would be in play. But at 4.5, I don't think we can go there. I don't think I can get to Landale either. Like I think he will see more minutes. I don't think he starts, but center only, I think it's kind of tough to get to Landale too.
If Landale starts, he's then in play, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if Landale starts, then I'm more okay getting to him. Because I think if he starts, he probably plays at least 20 minutes. Could play more. And he's about a fantasy point per minute player. So he would be someone that I would be more than okay getting to if he starts. But if he comes on the bench, I think he's too pricey.
Even in a start, I don't anticipate getting much. If you want, like in my baseline model, he's a 0.9 guy. He's been playing a little bit better than that. Even if you just want to say a fantasy point per minute in 24 minutes is the start, that's 24 fantasy points at 4,800. That's 5x on the dot. That is like an unremarkable option if it happens. Certainly then removes you from getting to Jeff Green on DraftKings. Does not remove you from getting to Jeff Green on FanDuel, where he's 3,700 and small forward only.
I don't think there's anyone else too. Like you can't get to like Jayshawn Tate or anyone like that. Like I think that's too much. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I'm focused on getting to large amounts of the 4 real starters in Brooks, Van Vliet, Jabari Smith, and Jalen Green. And then it looks like I'm going to be pretty largely fading Amen Thompson. unless they do something weird with their starting lineup. But I think the consensus is Jeff Green slots in.
Like, I think it's interesting right now that the ownership difference with Amen Thompson and Peyton Pritchard. Like, for me, I think those two are pretty similar plays. And right now, like, Thompson's is getting way more ownership.
Thompson's a little bit better of a per minute guy, and I think that's probably what's causing it. But I get where you're going with it. It's certainly, he's like a very natural pivot to him in large field GPPs.
Right.
I get why Amen Thompson is a better play. I don't agree with I think the negative leverage that we're showing is a little bit more reasonable. If he were owned like his optimal rate, if he were just like 22% owned, that would look pretty reasonable to me in this spot.
Yeah, like I think he's going just a bit over owned. I'd probably put it like 15 to 20%. I would say it's probably the correct ownership. But yeah, I think so. Right now at 30% or 31%, whatever he is, I just think he's going a bit over owned for his chance of success.
San Antonio side is pretty bleak. We've got Wemby in. We might lose Keldon Johnson. He is now questionable with a stomach illness. 9% ownership coming into Devin Vassell. Basically unowned rest of the team, including Wemby. I have 16% of Vassell, 8 of Wemby. Basically the same ownership on FanDuel too. Maybe we start getting to Champagne if Keldon Johnson ends up out. That creates like the tiniest amount of value, but the San Antonio side is just not looking very good.
Yeah, even if Keldon gets ruled out, I mean, I guess the prices come up in Champagne. The minutes also ticked up a little bit too. Like maybe he could become playable. I think my favorite play here in San Antonio is Wembanyama, just because we saw in his first game back, 31 minutes, clearly not on a limit. Houston obviously is a bit undersized without Şengün. So, I think Wembanyama should be all of his way against this Houston front court. And at 2%, I think he stands out as a pretty good tournament play. Vassell is 9%. I'm kind of indifferent on him. He's second on the team in usage on the season. Price point feels about right, though. I think it's pretty difficult to get to anyone else like Jones or Sohan or anyone like that. Maybe those guys start looking a little bit better if Keldon Johnson gets rolled out, but still, I think there'd be other options in the mid-range I'd rather get to, even if Keldon does get rolled out.
I kind of do want to see Keldon get ruled out because I think that's like a slight bump to Vassell that won't really get factored in any way. But, it's just going to help. It's another guy that likes to take shots, but we'll see it mild value to Champagne at best. Otherwise, it's 10-6 Wemby chilling there, but I prefer... Like we've got enough center options out there. I prefer Sabonis to Wemby today. Just that the likelihood of him playing like 36 or 37 minutes in comparison to the 31 or 32 for Wemby starts to matter. Even though Victor Wembanyama is scoring 1.99 DraftKings points per minute over the past 30 days.
Yeah, he's been on a tear recently, so that's why I think that at 2%, he's someone I'm totally fine getting overweight to.
And for anybody, Chris, I'm responding to you. You're not the first person I've seen say it. They can't put Boban on the floor if Victor Wembanyama is out there. That is not going to work. It's not like Boban's going to follow him to the 3-point line so he can get blown by in a really embarrassing way. He can't be out there with him. It's just not. It's not like they have to post up Boban if Wemby's on the floor. It's not a requirement that your center only stands on the block. You can't put him out there. It's game, set, match.
No, there's no way Boban can see the floor. I honestly think they're going to go. I think Dylan Brooks will be on Wembanyama a decent amount. He was on him a decent amount last game they played. So I think Brooks will be on him, maybe some Jeff Green. But yeah, there's no way you're going to see Boban see the floor.
It's a lot like seeing Drew Holiday guard Joel Embiid. Like the NBA is changing to the point where they're trying to get these littler guys underneath the big men, keeping and allowing a quick double and rotation. Defenses are too smart now for that kind of stuff.
Right.
I got nothing else for San Antonio.
Yeah, I think I'm ready to move on.
We got to talk about BetMGM first. I know I want to talk about them. They got a hell of a deal going on. Bet $5. Get $150 in bonus bets. They come in 3 separate $50 bonus bets. All you got to do, click the link in chat or in the description. Be able to sign up. Minimum deposit's going to be $10, but you only got to get bet 5 to get 150. Your worst case scenario, you lose your $5 bet and all 3 $50 bonus bets, but you've only lost $5 of your own money. That has to feel pretty good. You win one of those bonus bets, and you're probably looking at north of $100 from that bonus. You win two of them, you're probably well over 200, and maybe more, depending on if you're taking any sort of big underdogs with those bonus bets. It's a great deal. I'm taking advantage of it. Shout out to the state of North Carolina. You guys should as well. You gotta be 21 or over, however. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Links for BetMGM in chat right now. Boston Celtics, 6-point favorites in Utah, 228 total. For Boston, we got their injury report finally. No Jaylen Brown, no Al Horford, no Kristaps Porzingis. Q-tag on Svi Mykhailiuk, which is like oddly important in that, like those are, it changes the scope of Sam Hauser in a bit of a way. Sam Hauser, 43% owned right now. Luke Cornett, 66% owned. 40% ownership to Jason Tatum, 30 to Derek White, another 20 to Drew Holiday. What do you want to do here with this Boston Celtics team?
I want to play them all. I think Boston looks amazing. Great matchup. You take out Jaylen Brown, you take out Porzingis, no Al Horford. I'm assuming they're going to go the starting lineup of Holiday, White, Hauser, Tatum, and Cornett. Is that what you think as well?
Holiday, White, Hauser. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I mean, in their most recent game, they ran an 8-man rotation. They gave their starters big minutes. Taking a look at some rates with Brown and Porzingis off the court. Tatum has about a 37% usage rate. Looking at fantasy point per minute, he's 1.45 fantasy points per minute with those two off the court. Derek White's at 1.3 with those two off the court. So that is a bit interesting. Yeah, this is a team, I think probably my favorite team to target on the slate. You're getting a lot of ownership, but you should be. I do find it a little bit interesting that Cornett is 65% and Tillman is sub 1%. Yeah. I think Cornett starts and probably does play more, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities that like split the center minutes down the middle. And if you're going to get, 65-1 ownership, I think Tillman is a little bit interesting as a contrarian option. But Tatum, White, Holiday, Hauser, I think all look pretty good. Hauser tilted me last night. I felt like he was a pretty bad play once we got the news that he was not starting. And then in the second half, he just lit it up from three. So that was a little bit annoying. But today, I think he's a pretty good play, assuming he starts. Give me all the Boston. And then Tillman, I like as a contrarian play. And we talked about Pritchard a little bit earlier. I'm much higher on him as well. He's only getting about 4% ownership. Expect him to play like low 20s minutes or so off the bench, maybe a little bit more. So yeah, Boston as a whole, I think is my favorite team to target. I'm getting a lot of these guys.
Yeah, it's hard to avoid them, honestly. It's when you take Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis off the floor, and to a lesser extent Al Horford, but that's more of like a take the minutes off the floor thing than take the production off the floor. You're just going to be left with obviously interesting plays. I mean, you're looking at someone like a 4K Luke Cornett likely stepping into a starting role, even if you want to discount his rates in a big way for playing alongside of high-end talent. He's still likely to play, at a minimum 24 minutes, barring any sort of foul trouble or injury like that. Similar situation on the opposite side for Tillman. Could easily play a little bit more at 3,800. Definitely like the idea of taking some shots on Tillman in a large field GPP. He would be like really interesting in that 100K field on DraftKings, like the perfect guy to be like, oh, what happened? Like anything happens to Luke Cornett and Tillman's just going to be out there soaking up a chunk of time. So I like that shout. I don't think there's anything to really say about Cornett. If he's named the starter, he's going to be one of the most popular plays on the slate, if not the most popular one. How do you want to manage, though, a 41% owned Tatum?
I think I'll probably be overweight to that. Yeah, I mean, I just think in this matchup, like with those two guys off the court, I think it's kind of hard. I think he's definitely my favorite spend up in the slate. So totally fine with that ownership. I think I'll probably be overweight to it.
I keep looking at like Anthony Edwards being 2.5%. Now, obviously, Jason Tatum projects way better than the guys that are bookending him in price right now. But you just look at Edwards and it's like, okay. You look at Jalen Brunson at 9,300, not even close to the same projection, 3% owned. De'Aaron Fox, 9,100, 4% owned. Even like Dame, Halliburton, Maxey. Like we have all these guys that are like 3 or 4% owned. I feel like one or two of them can run down Jason Tatum in a scenario like this, but I don't say that as if I don't think Jason Tatum's a good play. He is very clearly the best pay up option that you can get to. He's very clearly going to be in every cash lineup you're building if you're playing today, if you're playing cash. But I do see some names around him that wouldn't make me crazy if like I got that stand and gave up some of that Jason Tatum ownership. At the same time, he looks fantastic.
Yeah, like you mentioned, there's a lot of guys in that range that are just getting no ownership. So if you feel strongly about someone in that 9K range, like go ahead and play them because they're going to be very, very low owned because Tatum's soaking up all this ownership. One other thing to mention was I found a little bit interesting that White is 2x the ownership of Holiday. I think they're relatively similar plays, but we did go over it. Like White does have pretty good fancy point per minute with Brown and Porzingis off the court. So
Sure.
yeah, I like all of Boston.
Hard not to. It's really, really hard not to. Um, and I don't really have much of a disagreement for any of that as well. On the off chance that Hauser doesn't start and they like go to Spee or they go to guards for Peyton Pritchard because it is Utah. They tend to run small in terms of running guard. Like a lot of Jordan Clarkson at the 3. I think you can get away with Drew Holiday at the 3 in those situations. How would you feel then about a $4,800 Pritchard if you knew he was in the starting lineup?
Oh yeah, if I knew he was starting, I would be very, very high on Pritchard. He was someone that I got like I did everything I could to get him in on the main slate, and then obviously the
Same.
showdown. He was someone that I was prioritizing for sure. So yeah, if they go like a 3-guard starting lineup and he's in the starting lineup, then yeah, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get him in my lineup.
What I like to hear. Anything else for the Boston Celtics?
I don't think so. I mean, you probably see a little bit of a Shea Brissett in the rotation as well, but
Yeah.
I don't know if it's necessary. I think I would just rather take shots on the 2 centers or Hauser for a little bit more.
Anything interesting to you for Utah? We've got Walker Kessler pulling 17% ownership, and then everybody else is like 4% owned. Same guys that are normally out are out.
Yeah, I think Kessler's probably the easiest guy to get to, sub 5K. Pretty good point per minute player, so he's probably the easiest guy to get to. But I do think some of these other main rotation guys are interesting at low ownership. I mean, they ran a very tight rotation last game. Keontae George in his first game back played 38 minutes. Sexton played 36 minutes. Clarkson played 28. John Collins still played 30 plus minutes. So I think some of the main guys are interesting right now at their ownerships. Like 4% Sexton and 3% Keontae George, I think are good contrarian plays. If you get similar minutes to last game, I don't see why you wouldn't unless the game blows out. Like they just like who else they have minutes to, right? So I think those 2 guards, or all 3 guards really, Sexton, Clarkson, and George right now, all sub 5% are pretty good contrarian plays. But I don't think there's anyone else I'd get to. Sensabaugh has been playing more, but his price has risen. Yeah, so I think the 3 guards plus Kessler is where I'd look to. But yeah, I don't mind getting overweight to any of those guys. The 3 guards.
I've got a decent stand on Kessler, but I'm with you on the guards. Like they look like the perfect pivot to somebody that's pulling a bunch of ownership. Like you build a relatively chalky lineup. You want to grab one of those Jazz guys that play like 32 minutes. I don't think that's nuts at all, whether it's Sexton or Clarkson or George. Like swap one dude out for that and you'll be changing your lineup in a pretty nice way. But I don't have any individual thoughts on these guys. They all kind of look like 5% optimal dudes.
Yeah, and it won't be the same Boston defense too with Porzingis and Horford off the court, right? So
right.
Yeah, I think those guys are good GPP plays.
Minnesota Timberwolves are 6.5-point dogs in Los Angeles taking on the Clippers. We can basically say nothing here. 10% ownership coming into Rudy Gobert, minimal ownership everywhere else. Q tag on Kyle Anderson, Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert, and Monty Morris. If they're all in, Minnesota doesn't look very interesting. You lop off Anthony Edwards, everything changes. You lop off Rudy Gobert, everything changes. Even Kyle Anderson will make a very big trickle down to the rest of this Minnesota team. It's really hard to hypothesize on anything. And you get 2 of them, that change, and now you're stacking up crazy value in a 10 o'clock game. It's just really hard to break down right now.
Yeah, it is. I think Anthony Edwards plays. He's been questionable like the last 3 games. I'm pretty sure he will play. I think the other guys are a bit more 50-50 since they missed the most recent game. Like if Gobert sits, Naz Reid played 42 minutes in the most recent game. I know 7K feels like a lot, but honestly, I think if Gobert doesn't play, I would be totally fine playing 7K Naz Reid. Obviously, if Gobert plays, you can't do that. So yeah, this team's just kind of tough to talk about. If everyone's in, I think probably Gobert would be the easiest guy to get to. And you mentioned Ant a little bit earlier. I think he is interesting as a contrarian play without Karl-Anthony Towns. He's going to have to do everything for the team, but really not the best matchup here against the Clippers. So
No.
keep an eye on the news. It is a late game. Luckily, we do have 2 9 p.m. Central games. So you could leave some flexibility and move some stuff around depending on what happens with Minnesota.
Yeah. You got to be ready for this one because this is going to carry the most weight. If everybody ends up in, then it's much ado about nothing. But if we start losing a couple of those guys, the swaps that you make in that Minnesota matchup to whatever else you can get from the Clippers, Milwaukee, and Sacramento will be the most important plays that you can get for the day. But you have to be able to make them at that moment. On the Clippers side, it's kind of the same problem, which isn't helpful,
Yeah.
but it is for a late swap perspective. Paul George questionable, Kawhi Leonard questionable, single-digit ownership to everybody on the Clippers. James Harden does get to 10% on FanDuel. I actually got to 18% of Kawhi and 12% of Zubats, but I'm happy to get any one of the 4 main dudes, Harden, Leonard, George, Zubats. But at the same time, this could also change in a dramatic way and open up Norm Powell potentially, Bones Highland potentially, probably not Amir Coffey unless the whole team gets an illness. This could be, I mean, when all of the news for Minnesota and the Clippers drops, there's a path forward where everything is just a gigantic fire of epic proportions.
Yeah, like if you could get like, you know, a lot of guys out on both sides, and then this game just looks like super, super appealing. If everyone's in for the Clippers, I'm kind of with you. Any of those main 4 guys, I think, are reasonable to get to. There'd be no standouts, though, if George and Kawhi Leonard are in. I think Zubac would probably be my preferred option if everyone's in. 5.3K, 25, 26 minutes over the last couple of games. He's only getting about 4% ownership. So I think right now he's my preferred option. But, you know, if you get one or both these guys missing, then, you know, you're looking to Powell, you're looking to Coffey, man. Bones Highland has been in the rotation. Ooh. He would probably play decent minutes off the bench. So could be another appealing team depending on news. So yeah, definitely keep a close eye on this. And again, we luckily do have 2 games. So you could move some stuff around depending on what happens.
Speaking of news, Jalen Williams out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that. And this is something we've talked about. I feel like a lot of the times recently we've been seeing guys go through shoot around and then get ruled out. I don't know what's been going on.
That is a big change for OKC. That is a massive bump to SGA. We probably create some value out of somebody else. This could make Josh Giddey look very different than he does right now. The trickle of this is pretty massive. NBA Live Before Lock will be able to break down a lot more of that for you. And you'll be able to, if you want to, you can use our data today. You can have access to all of the data. Stochastic data, all access package. That's player projections, ownership projections, boom bust, top stacks, top pitchers, all of our top tools, depending on the sport, Discord, and our base level sims. It's $299 a month. I know that sounds like a very big number, but if it helps, I could help you out here. If you use our avatar when you sign up for this package and you use it moving forward, each month is $100 less for you. That'll be $199 instead of $299 just by using the avatar. There's absolutely no reason you shouldn't do that, folks. Links are going to be in chat or in the description of this video. But if you want access to all of our data, use our avatar, get it for $199.95. Olrat just hit us with the super chat. He said, I heard don't play Zubats. Clippers might go small. I would not take that advice. I would play Zubats. I don't see the reason that they would want to go small against Minnesota other than like trying to stretch out Rudy Gobert, which they can do, I guess, but like,
yeah, I don't
what are they replacing
either?
If you like Daniel Tice, go for it, I guess. If that's the version of small.
Yeah, like last game, Zubac did struggle against Minnesota, but you saw 29 minutes for Tice out the bench. So like, I don't think they're going to go small. I think you're going to see like one big out there at all times.
Like, if you want to say don't play Zubats, I think that's fine. He's 4% owned. He's a relatively uninteresting guy, but I don't think that is unlocking anybody else for you. Like, Daniel Tice would be a hell of a flyer in this scenario, and I don't think that's meant for the size contests we have today.
Yeah, like you just can't play like Daniel Tice over like the Boston Centers. I think like it just you can't do that.
Final game. Not too much to say here. Milwaukee Bucks, Sacramento Kings. Bucks are 1-point favorites. It's like 8 to 10% ownership on Dame, Giannis, Malik Beasley, and Pat Connaughton. We got the news earlier today that Chris Middleton is still out. I'm happy to get to shares of like any one of these starters, but I don't find Milwaukee, even in a good spot, there are no priorities. They just look like solid enough options.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. Since coming back from break, Dame and Giannis both have a 33% assist percentage. So they're just kind of doing everything for the team right now. A reasonable price points, 11.5 for Giannis, 8.9 for Dame. I think I would prefer Giannis if I had to pick between those two top end guys. The minutes have ticked up a little bit in Pat Connaughton. He's 3.3K, 26 minutes over the last couple games. So he's like a viable dart throw if you need some salary relief. And you mentioned Malik Beasley. He's also played a little bit more, 39 minutes over the last couple of games. He's getting sub 10% ownership. So any of those four guys I think are fine to get to. I don't think I get to anyone else. The price importance has come up too much. I think it's too tough to prioritize a guy like Lopez. He's only center eligible. So it's Giannis, Beasley, Dame, and Connaughton in play for me, and they're all more secondary plays.
And then on the Sacramento side, 12% ownership to Domantas Sabonis, 5 or less to basically everybody else. No one gets to 10% on the FanDuel side. I got a pretty big stand on Sabonis. I have 26%. I'm very happy to get to him in this spot. And then I just have scattered amounts of Fox, Murray, Herter, Monk, Lyles. No priorities here either, other than Sabonis for me.
And Keegan Murray's still questionable, right? But he also did go through shoot around.
Which
I guess
we
you never know with
is
that.
Meaningless.
Yeah.
But yes, he is questionable with that left ankle sprain.
Okay. Just to mention, like, because we've seen this a lot recently, if he doesn't play, I think you just feel better about the minutes for guys like Barnes and Herter and Lyles and Monk. So those guys would all look appealing if he doesn't play. But right now, I think he will play. I do like our call in Sabonis. Like, he's been playing extremely well. Should play high 30s minutes in this spot. Reasonable price point at 10.4K. So I do like him at, just over 10% ownership. Fox is low owned, but he's at a price point it was a little bit tricky to get to when you have Tatum, like, for a little bit more. So yeah, I think Sabonis probably my preferred option, and then maybe look into some of these wings if Keegan Murray ends up getting rolled out. But right now, I think he will play.
There we go. Malcolm, I see your super chat. I'm going to leave that one for the NBA Live before lock through. Guys, thank you for being here. Make sure you hit that thumbs up if you haven't done it yet. It is really helpful for all of us. Shout out to BetMGM for being the sponsor. We're going to get on out of here. Good luck for this slate. I'll see you guys on Playback. Peace.
Hey, it's that time of week again. Time to induct you fine people into the Stochastic Hall of Fame. Give away a bunch of Stochastic packages on top of that as well. And all you got to do to get involved, download the Stochastic profile picture at stochastic.com/avatar and tweet those wins to us at Stochastic HOF when you finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more. Let's see what we got on tap this week. Cheesy T with a $17,000 win. Shout out to Eric Lindquist for his nuke of the night. Second place will have to do. Couldn't have done it without the tools and videos by Stochastic. I rep the OG logo. Hope you don't mind. And then Jacob Hiller. Gotta be careful with that one. The last few days have been good to me. Big shout out to Stochastic and staff for providing absolute best tool on the market, period. Up 90 grand and some change in the last 7 days. Simple to quickly and efficiently adjust to however you like to approach a GPP. Nice work, Jacob. 90 grand in a week. Tyler Mattis, thought we had first locked up, but Henley let me down. Still a great week. Shout out to Stochastic and Greg Ehrenberg, who always give great insights into the tools. $15,000 win for Tyler. And for James, a $5,000 win at Stochastic Hall of Fame. Man, a few words. Wayne started playing again the past week. I won this with the Sims tool. Do I qualify for a free month of NBA? LOL, thanks a million. Was very happy to see the Nurk ejected. Also, yes, you do qualify, my friend. And Steven with a $15,000 win on top of that. Man, huge week for the Stochastic avatars. Kilo Whiskey, little late into the Hall of Fame, but never too late. Thanks to the Stochastic tools. Thank you guys. Second place in the N1. And Ben P's back. Back-to-back top threes using FanDuel, on FanDuel using the Sims. Almost pulled off the solo dub, but tied with different lineups. 4 in the top 40 out of 71,000 entries. And how about Ben? The playback stream after lock is definitely a huge help. Thanks, guys. Ben again split both of these last night, but another great night. Third time in less than a week. Yeah, Sims tool coming up big for Ben. Dave Oliver, Thank you guys for the great breakdowns and the Sims crush again. Elway's Army's been on a massive heater lately. Unhappy Cowboys fan. Don't blame you. Won 2 days before my birthday and did not post. Is it too late for the Stochastic Hall of Fame shout out? Never too late, brother. Never too late. LV finished tied first in a field of 14,000 plus and second in a field of 10K. Smaller stakes, but got it done. Rocking the logo. Can I get my free month, please? Absolutely. And Willie Jenkins, first place in the Minimax. Binked my first NBA GPP. Thanks entirely to Stochastic. We keep going. Sean Geesey back in the list. Grab second in the late slate 4-point play. Shout out to Stochastic for the best tools in the game. And Jay, Stochastic Sims have been on fire. All credit to the tools for taking first in this contest, helping me get the second top finish in as many weeks. It's not a coincidence that the top 3 in this contest were all repping the avatar. And Rob came fourth in a field of 5,900 NHL tournament, took first in a smaller field NHL tournament. Really appreciate what you guys do every day. Mac, need to thank Slim Cliffy and Josh for their daily guidance. We got a couple NHL ones in here and weekly entertainment on Stochastic DFS. And then Moo Poo did it again. First place, $1,000 in some MMA action, followed by BK. Shout out to Eric and Stochastic on Malik Monk. $1 into 1,500 isn't bad. That'll do it. All of your winners inducted into the Hall of Fame. Welcome back if you've been here before. Remember, all you got to do to get involved, to get a free month, any Stochastic package of your choice up to $200 is finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more at any entry point and tweet those wins to us at Stochastic HOF.
Jazz hands.
Let me get the standard that we count down from 5. What is happening, everybody? Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock. We are once again sponsored by BetMGM. If you guys haven't checked out BetMGM, you really should. The deal that they have going on right now, it is the best deal available for new sign-up offer that any sportsbook is offering. And we don't know when it's going away. BetMGM told us it's going away soon. They haven't given us the exact date yet. But if you guys sign up at BetMGM, use the link that we have below. You bet $5 on anything at all that they have on the site. You could bet on an NBA game, an NHL game. You could bet on whatever thing that you want. And when you place that $5 bet, they're going to give you $150 in bonus bets. So sign up at BetMGM if you guys haven't already. Take advantage of it. Click on our link below. For you or anybody you know has a gambling problem, call or text the number 1-800-GAMBLER. Eric, how are you doing today? Coming off of what was a very good slate for you, but as we were talking about before the show started, it did end in a little bit of a tilting fashion because you were so close to the sun, but perhaps too close.
Yeah, so I think what makes it feel better is there was a sub ahead of me that had this Stochastic avatar who was 0.25 ahead of me in the big $4. And I basically was fading Sam Hauser at that point. I tried to get it as much Pritchard as I could, tried to get off of Hauser as much as I could. I still ended up with, whatever was in a forward spot where he was the only piece left or things of that nature. So there's going to be some kind of artificial ownership there, but his projection drops to 18. I end up on as much Peyton Pritchard as possible, obviously in the lineup that I needed it up top. I'm sitting there in third, what would have been second at the end of the night if Hauser had just put up 21, which again, he's projected for 18. Knocks down 6 threes. First time he's played more than 25 minutes off the bench in a game all season long. Plays 32 and just smashes. But you know what? We got a short memory span. It's time to rock because we got to contemplate Sam Hauser and Luke Cornett a lot tonight. This is going to be another really, really good slate. Yesterday was very late swap heavy. No surprise that Josh had a really good night. No surprise I had a good night, and everybody else utilizing the late swap tool here at Stochastic had a good night. How did you fare yesterday?
Yeah, so I about doubled my money for the slate. I was like 1.5x in the $4, and then I doubled up all my stuff in my single entry stuff. So like the $100 single entry, the $40, all that stuff. So it was profitable, nothing like crazy. I did have, of my 150 lineups, 8 of them finished as top 1% lineups, which is the way when I'm going back and looking at my lineups. Like I look at the post-contest sims, but I also really do like to measure what percentage of my lineups are finishing in the top 1%. And yeah, it was a good one by that metric yesterday. None of those were good enough to break into the top 10 of that big $4 GPP. I think my best one finished like 96th or something like that.
Yeah.
But, never going to complain about being profitable.
Well, I mean, I had 25th, 28th, 30th, 45th, and something else. And I was just like, oh, I like barely 3x'd or like something like 2.5x'd. I'm like, this is brutal. But you know what? Those big $4, as much as it is like disappointing, you're going to get so many great opportunities in that because of how soft the field is overall. So if you're watching these shows and if you're using the Sims tool, you've already got a leg up on the competition because it's just showing time and time and time again how much better our stuff is at updating and utilizing new information, having Freeman Liberty not in that starting lineup, how that changed immediately in the late swap tool for me. It gave me a chance to win a lot of money. And, I think that there's going to be plenty of those slates throughout a season. You just need to run a little bit better. And Sam Hauser did not have me running better yesterday.
If you guys haven't done yet, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We've got some super chats to get to. I'll be checking our questions in Discord as well. One of the perks being a Stochastic sub is you do get access to that Discord channel. And we're going to have a shit ton of injury news that's likely to pop up over the course of the slate. So something that is not uncommon for me, Eric, but I think this is a perfect slate to utilize this strategy. I'm going to have no exposure to the 76ers and Knicks game. It is out of the player pool because the game has a 209 total. We've got Tyrese Maxey coming back from the 76ers. We've got OG Anunoby coming back for the New York Knicks. So that is going to mean that players are a little bit overpriced with important pieces coming back. It is the lowest total on the slate at 209. There's no individual player that projects particularly well. Dante DiVincenzo is right around 10% projected ownership on DraftKings and FanDuel, but I feel like I could forego him. So I'm going to be leaving the Knicks 76ers game out of my player pool unless something totally absurd happens where a bunch of guys get ruled out. Is that how you're approaching it as well, or do you see it differently?
No, I'm probably going to do that here. I'm just building 25 lineups today in the main DK tournament and just kind of rolling with it. I've got some stuff that I have to do tonight. But I am pretty positive that I'm with you. I will say the one thing that I'm a little bit just kind of waiting on. I think there's a chance that Precious Achiuwa starts and that they just don't have Isaiah Hartenstein out there. Mo Bamba isn't some kind of like this ominous center that you're worried about on the other side. Paul Reed a little bit undersized at the center position. Like, I think there's a way that Hartenstein comes off the bench and they maybe just go to like that main five. And I think that would make the Precious minutes a little bit better than what we have projected. But again, there's no way that at 6,500, he's even a guy that I would want to get to like double-digit % of, but he's nearly a fantasy point per minute guy. If he ends up getting the starting nod against Philly and Hartenstein does not, I think there's at least a case to be made to get to a share or two of him. But then he probably ends up a little bit more popular in a way where like I probably wouldn't want to get to him anyway. So more than likely, I am with you.
Yeah, so it's a game that's, it's at least on paper, it should be competitive. There's just going to be better spots to target as far as DFS is concerned. And also, as you guys know, we've got our playback show that happens right after this one ends where myself, Josh, whoever else pops on, we sweat out the games, we react to injury news, we place some bets. And we do have a guest joining us tonight. So going to try to be getting more guests on. So if you guys are familiar with Kyle Kerms, he's big in the betting streets for NBA and college basketball. So he's going to be joining us on the post-lock show for a little bit tonight. And we'll talk about some bets and sweat the game. So get some extra guests involved, get some more voices, some more bets in the mix. But let's now start talking about some of the super chats we've gotten here, starting with Malcolm Revamp, who is saying, well, he did reference Josh in the super chat here, but can Josh be bothered to answer your guys' questions? Not in the way that Eric and I can. Malcolm Revamp wants to know who are the NBA tiers? One, Josh, who friend? Okay, so I think he was just asking about tier one for tiers, but I'm going to do you one better. We'll give you all 6. Starting at tier 1, this is still going to be Giannis for me. I know that Jalen Williams has been ruled out for the Oklahoma City Thunder, but still going to be Giannis over SGA. Is that where you're at, or it was Jalen being ruled out enough for you to want to get to SGA?
I think it's pretty close. I'm still going to lean with Giannis as well. I mean, you have the opportunity then to pivot to Domantas. You can kind of like see what's happening with the rest of your lineup in tiers. If you're just building one lineup though, trying to get different at a spot, I don't mind SGA there.
All right, let's go to tier 2 then. I mean, this
Tatum
is
moving on.
simple. Jason Tatum.
Yep.
Nothing else needed to be said.
Nope.
Tier 3, we've got Damian Lillard, we've got Tyrese Halliburton. Those are the 2 options that I'm most inclined to get to. But give me Tyrese Halliburton, who has looked slightly better coming back from his numerous injuries that he's had as of late. He's not playing at nearly the level he was early on in the season, but still, we are starting to see that the minutes are more secure than they were earlier in the season. Something else that's kind of nice to see, the usage has started to uptick a little bit, which is maybe an indication he's getting slightly healthier. 36 and 37 minutes the last two games. It also came with a 28 and a 26.5% usage rate. So give me a Tyrese Halliburton in tier 3.
Yeah, I like him very much for tournaments today.
Tier 4 is tricky because we've got Kawhi in here, and I do think that Kawhi rightfully is the player who should project the best here, but he's questionable to play. He's one of many players that are questionable on the injury report, and he's not the only player that's questionable for the Clippers. We also have Paul George questionable, so it's a weird scenario where Kawhi is the best overall option. If Paul George is out and Kawhi's in, he's the best option in this tier by a wide margin. The question becomes, though, are you willing to click on Kawhi Leonard knowing there's a chance he could get ruled out later?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of get 2 for 1. Gobert's sitting there too questionable. You would have an opportunity to potentially get to him. Obviously, if that news does not come out before 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, you're sitting with Fred VanVleet. So I'd probably be waiting. I'll click on Kawhi. You could hopefully have Gobert in the event that Kawhi's out.
Yeah, I would say if you guys want to be just totally avoiding any risk, then you go to Fred VanVleet here with Şengün out. Because, there is a scenario where Kawhi and Gobert are both ruled out. If you play one of them, then you're just kind of shit out of luck for later. So it's a tricky scenario. It's very risky because of the injury reports, but I will go with Fred VanVleet if you guys want to totally avoid risk. Kawhi Leonard is the best overall option. Tier 5, Jalen Green.
Jalen Green.
Tier 6. Give me Derek White with all the players resting for the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, it's him or Sexton, 1-2 for me.
All right, so there we have it. Thank you for the super chat, Malcolm Revamp, and shout out to Chris Williams, who gifted out 5 YouTube memberships for the people out there. Chris, always love how you support the channel. You are definitely one of the more dedicated followers who also watches all our playback shows afterwards, and is always a delight. Always very nice, Chris. Never negative. Always a good interact with our friend from Apple. Phil Senzig. Phil wants to know, who's the cursed play of the night?
Ooh. I'm torn. I'm kind of on 2 guys. I mean, Dylan Brooks. Who enjoys clicking on Dylan Brooks at chalk? I mean, that has to be the guy. I mean, I'm less inclined to go to him now because I think Lou Dort became a little bit more interesting at his position, at his price point, but yeah, we're going to go with Dylan Brooks because, again, when have you ever backed Dylan Brooks to do good things at chalk and felt good afterwards? I make a good point.
I'm going to go with Kyle Kuzma, not because he's not showing up in lineups for me or anything like that, but I am underweight to the field on him. And it's another one of these scenarios. He locks at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And there are so many players who are questionable to play. I'm assuming better options are going to open up later on this slate. So not a full fade on Kuzma or anything like that for me, but we do have him projected for, 29% owned. That's a little rich for me considering the amount of players who are on the injury report what could open up. So I do currently have him in sub 20% of lineups. So I'm going to go with Kyle Kuzma as the cursed play of the night. Ryan Andriotti wants to know, best value plays and contrarian value. Appreciated the call last night. Had a little sweat in the $40 single entry. Yeah, nice. we did come away with some pretty good contrarian value options. I think my guy was Jonte Porter yesterday, which certainly ended up helping out some of my lineups because Porter was like 7% owned or something like that and had a pretty big game. So let's try to replicate it. Best value plays and then best contrarian value. If we're just talking about best overall value on the slate, it just has to be the Boston Celtics, doesn't it?
Yes. Cornette Hauser. Yeah, those are the 2.
Luke Cornette, Sam Hauser. I know Dylan Brooks is super popular, but
I have a little O'Shea Brissett right now.
Play as a cash game play, best overall points per dollar option. Dylan Brooks would have to be in that mix. If you want to be contrarian for a value option, is there anybody we could find that we're liking at low ownership? Is there anybody akin to the Jonte Porter from last night?
Something's got to show up from OKC, right? Like that for me is kind of what I'm staring at right now. Again, Dort's 4,200. He's going to get more popular, I think, as we go. I think Cason Wallace gets the start. he started the second half. I can't remember who it was that got dinged up that he ended up starting the second half for. Yeah, I think it was last time for Williams for a little bit, but I think Casey Wallace is probably contrarian and interesting at the moment. Aaron Wiggins, maybe. I mean, whatever that starter ends up being, you've got Wallace and Wiggins, 3,300, 3,200. I will be contemplating both of them.
Oh, all right. I'm giving it a 1 over here. So Lou Dort isn't projected for much ownership now, but that is going to change in short order. I'm
so
about
too.
to go refresh our ownership page to see if that's changed, because he has to get more popular now considering the OKC injury situation.
I'm with you.
Is there somewhere else I'd want to go, though?
Something important I was supposed to do today. It's Nudie Magazine Day. Nudie Magazine Day. Nudie Magazine Day. What day is it today? October. What a great movie. Norm Macdonald, rip.
One of my favorites. Him and Patrice O'Neal. I'm trying to think who's a player who could really significantly benefit from injuries. I mean, Naz Reid's, or I was looking at Naz Reid. He's already 7K, so it's not going to be him. Because there's so many players on the injury report.
I like Naz Reid. So there's a part of me that wants to like make him nuke of the night, but obviously you need 3 injuries. Well, 2.5 injuries to kind of break your way. The Ant one, whatever. Kyle Anderson and Rudy Gobert, if they are out, I will be playing as much Naz Reid as I can.
I'm going to go with Jaden McDaniels at $4,900. There's a couple of reasons we could be getting there. And it's not just the injury report on the Minnesota side. And here's also why I think if you guys are using the Sims tool at Stochastic PR, what are you waiting for? Sign up using the links we have below. But there are players who are questionable on both sides of the game. So we've talked about the Minnesota injuries, the Clippers injuries. What we haven't talked about is if they're playing each other. So if we get this scenario where all you need is 1 or 2 of these guys rolled out from either side of the game, if you have spots in your lineups reserved for that potential injury news, I think that's just so likely that somebody's going to end up getting ruled out. So I'm not going to say that Jaden McDaniels ultimately ends up being that guy, but I'm cool with him being the player that I'm reserving lineup spots for. And then whatever happens with the injury news later, kind of pivoting around there. So we do have on the Minnesota side of the game, we already talked about on the Clippers side that Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are both questionable. But then on the Minnesota side of the game, Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert are both questionable, as well as, so those are the important players that are questionable. Kyle Anderson, also questionable on the injury report. He would be very important to the slate should he be ruled in and Edwards and Gobert both be ruled out. But then also Monty Morris is questionable. There's a scenario where all of these guys sit and the Timberwolves just go, hey, kind of punting the game, trying to get everybody healthy. If that's the case, there's so much value that opens up on Minnesota. So Jaden McDaniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, a couple guys to consider here. I'll go with McDaniels as a contrarian tournament option. I
do not mind that at the slightest. Like, I was running so many queries where, Kyle Anderson and Gobert off the floor with Anton, and then, trying to make everything work or figure out what the usage would be based on how some of the news breaks down, and had a couple of notes like Naz Reid, nearly 25% usage with all 3 off the floor. Was like a little bit surprised to see Jaden McDaniels down at 12.7%, but again, 65-minute sample size is nothing. So it's almost like throw it out the window, end of game blowout type stuff where Gobert, Edwards, and Anderson might be off the floor and they just close it out with McDaniels. He's been out on the floor in some blowout runs at times, but I am with you. I think that that's a really nice shout out. In the interest of me proving I am capable of reading, Victor Wembanyama will not have a minutes limit tonight. Yesterday, I read that incorrectly. Today, I have made the minutes limit is there once. Not. I read it twice. I read it 3 times just to confirm no minutes restriction for Wemby on tonight's slate, according to Greg Popovich. Now, the thing that's going to be funny about it, now that I've read this correctly, watch Popovich just play him limited minutes anyway. Yeah. It's well, I said, but that was my point yesterday. I didn't get to like any Wemby, and my whole thing is like, you can say no minutes limit, but there's like an invisible minutes limit out there. He played 31 in a competitive spot. Like, you might as well just put 32 and just hard cap it. Like 34 against Minnesota, absolute outlier. I don't think we've seen him get anywhere close to that the entire rest of the season. It would appear, no, 35 minutes against Minnesota. So twice against Minnesota, he's played 34 and 35 minutes. No other team has he exceeded 32. So like, there's an invisible cap there, even if you don't want to acknowledge it. Let's move on to the next question. It is from Samson. Samson is asking us a 1v1 question.
Jordan Poole or Keontae George tonight? And then he says, thanks. I think that's neither for me.
Yeah, it's going to be neither for me.
So I just ran a fresh sim for the news that we just got that came in, or not just came in, but the updates for the OKC situation and all that. So Keontae George in my top 150 lineups is in 0 of them. Jordan Poole in my top 150 lineups is also in 0 of them. So I can't advocate for these guys, Samson. I apologize, but I'm not playing either of them today.
Okay.
If it has to be one or the other, I'll say Keontae George. He has a matchup that I get is very difficult on paper against the Boston Celtics, but maybe a little bit deceiving because the amount of players who are out for Boston. So I'll go Keontae George, but honestly, neither.
Yeah, going to be neither for me too. Okay, look at you. Not necessarily answering the question, but also giving him the right information, I suppose, because that's what I do.
I'll make one amendment. If it has to be one or the other, Keontae George, because he starts later, and I give you a little bit more
That's the exact reason that I was going to give for it. It's like you might as well have the swap ability. Yep.
Drew Stern says, with Keldon out, who picks up the usage? So, Eric, what could we expect for added usage from the San Antonio Spurs in the absence of Keldon Johnson, who, keep in mind, guys, he has been coming off the bench for the San Antonio Spurs. And also, it's not like he's a guy who's typically playing, 38 minutes or any kind of massive minutes allotment. So I do think one of the more likely scenarios here is that his playing time kind of gets spread out amongst multiple guys. We're looking at like 28 to 30 minutes we have to fill for Keldon Johnson. And then also it's going to be bench guys that primarily benefit from this scenario because he does come off the bench to try to stagger his minutes a little bit with guys like Vassell and with Wembanyama. But is there anybody from the Spurs that you are eyeing now as a potential value option because Keldon is out?
Not like a crazy amount. I mean, Wemby by far has the most usage, 757 minutes with Keldon Johnson off the floor, 32.8% usage. That, my friends, is high. But then it goes Collins and Diakite, and neither of them are really going to see the floor enough. Collins had the first half evisceration that he had yesterday, which was wild to watch. But then Devin Vassell sitting there at 23%, Malachi Branham, 494 minutes, 20.2%. I guess the person who probably benefits the most is the person who is now walking into more usage off the bench. So I'm assuming that that's Brandon, but he's at 5K. And there's going to be just cheaper options all over the place that are playing 30 minutes. So, like, could he go out and have an outlier shooting performance? Yes, but the right answer is that, like, it's diluted enough throughout other players that might see the floor. And you're going to have, like, Barlow pick up some minutes. You're going to have Brandon pick up some minutes. You're going to have Blake Wesley, out there backing up Trey Jones and doing things like this just is a disturbing, disgusting spot. I mean, Devontae Graham is somebody that we have in the rotation here as well tonight. So this is just a tough spot to land on anything and feel confident that, like, you're all of a sudden going to see some massive usage spike. It's more than likely going to be hovering around 15-18% for all of these guys.
Yeah. And I just reran lineups for everything, like I said, and getting to a ton of guys from OKC with Jalen Williams out. I am not getting to these bench guys from the Spurs, though. And it's for a couple of reasons. First, you mentioned, Branham's priced up. It's not like we're getting him at a punt price. If he was 3K, totally different scenario, but he's priced pretty appropriately for this spot. Whereas a spot like OKC, I'm getting to a ton of Cason Wallace now. I get to a bunch of them. He's one of the top value plays on the slate now. So I'm not getting to any of these guys from the Spurs. And it seems like that's kind of where you're at as well.
Yep, 100%. Somebody just said Buddy Hield not starting. He didn't start last time out. We don't expect him to.
Yeah. And also, you probably shouldn't be playing him either way for multiple reasons. Coming off the bench, priced up at this point, Tyrese Maxey back, and all of that, in addition to the fact this is the first game on the slate, you're going to be taking up a lineup spot when there's probably going to be better value that opens up later.
100%.
Let's get into Discord. We'll hit on a couple of these questions, and then it'll be time to hit on the nuke of the night. So, guys, strap in. Get ready for that. First question we have from here is from Hey, I'm Drew. Hey, I'm Drew wants to know, who are the cash game locks for tonight? All right, let's go ahead and look at the players that we are most inclined to get to in cash games at this point. And as a pay-up option, is it viable to get SGA and Giannis into the same lineups for a cash game? I think it might be with the amount of value we have available, because you want to play Luke Cornett. You want to play Case and Wallace. You want to play Sam Hauser in cash. That's going to give you a lot of available salary. And then as far as pay up options go, at least for cash games, SGA is so popular, 30% projected ownership compared to 13% for Giannis. If you can only play one pay up option, I say SGA. I think you're going to be able to fit both of them in. So I'm going to say Kornet, Wallace, SGA, Hauser, and Giannis as your cash game core to build around.
What you talking about, Wallace? Yeah, no, I like it. I like it.
Anybody else that you would add in there is like, hey, you have to play this guy in cash?
Hauser, Kornet, Tatum, you said Tatum, yeah, and SGA. Case and Wallace, probably would be playing him at the moment, 3,300.
Well, so I'll ask this. Would you rather play Tatum or Giannis in cash? I know Tatum's way more popular, but I just don't think it's going to be all that hard to get to Giannis in cash games.
I think it's man, that's actually tough. I mean, it's going to be like a 2v2 type situation. Let me run my optimal for each one of them, and I will let you know here in 2 seconds. Might as well just do it and not talk hypothetically about it. All right, so my optimal has Tatum in it. My first lineup with
Tatum
Giannis,
and SGA, I assume.
Yep, it has SGA, Wallace, Wiggins, Tatum, Kornet, Van Vliet, Hauser, White. And then, yeah, I have to go to like my 16th or 17th lineup to get to Giannis. I'm with you. I think there's something that makes sense. It's all going to depend on what OKC's starting lineup is. You're going to get something of value there. With Williams out, you're going to get something, whether it ends up being Wallace, who I assume it's going to be. I think you probably do too, to some extent. I think Wiggins makes some sense as well. You should probably have both of them in cash just to like punt both spots. And then if that gets you to Giannis, I'd be fine with it. I think the thing I would want to know, well, I guess I'll go Giannis as well, because then Minnesota, LAC, not that you're going to have another lineup spot there. I think that's, I guess, what I'm kind of worried of there. And Tatum's going to be a 40% blocker. So it really depends. It's hard for me to say because I don't play enough cash. I play all the time in NFL. I rarely play in NBA doing shows, but Tatum, I mean, it would be really hard to walk away from him at 40% ownership, knowing he'd be like 70-75% in cash.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, the other part
I'm
too,
with you though. I think your logic makes sense.
Giannis.
Yeah, if you have that, you might as well just get to the highest projected lineup you can, because like at the end of the day, that's kind of what you're doing, whether or not that's the way you think about it. Like you want to have the highest projected lineup you possibly can. And if, you know, Giannis is a point of leverage, like him versus Tatum, you're going to take Giannis every single time just from a raw fantasy point perspective. So I totally get where you're coming from. I guess for me, it's just being worried about it being a Jason Tatum 58 spot. And then, you know, you're playing a 2v2 game that feels a little bit dangerous.
Shout out to SC in the YouTube chat. He gifted out 10 YouTube memberships. So SC, thank you very much for supporting the channel. And how about run the animation? Jordan, I think it's time for Nuke of the Night. People want to know who the Nuke is, so let's give it to them. Animation time. This is a tricky one. There's so many ways we can go.
Oh yeah. I've made my line in the sand already.
Oh, I've got mine too, so I'm curious to see what you plan. Kick us off here. The animation's played. Your nuts have been blown off. Who's the Nuke of the Night?
There you go. So let's go to Minnesota LAC. This is a game that obviously has tons of implications, has tons of opportunity. You're going to see a lot of injury news either break one way or the other way. And I don't really know what to make of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George and what we just saw injury-wise for them. But there is no way that I'm not going to build out lineups accounting for it and have some James Harden in my life right from the jump. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George did sit out last game. I thought it was like a maintenance deal, but the more that it sounds like they're just looking at getting as many maintenance days as possible because they've been playing more minutes, and both of them have avoided any kind of major injuries. This is a Clippers team that has a lot of money invested, not just for the stadium coming down the pipeline, but I mean, this is a team that is capable, if they can get everything firing on all cylinders, of being a title contender. But James Harden, 26.2% usage with Kawhi Leonard and George all over here this season. And from a ball handling perspective, I think you can already assume this, but the assist rate, 29.2%, has a lot of room to grow here in this offense. You have no Russell Westbrook coming off of the bench, so there's really no reason that you shouldn't be looking at James Harden. Obviously, he did not shoot the ball particularly well against Milwaukee there on Sunday. he didn't blow the slate up. And so therefore, people aren't necessarily highlighting him, targeting him. And it's Minnesota, where if everybody plays, they're the number one defensive team out there, period. End of story with Rudy Gobert and Anthony Edwards on the floor. But lots of injury news. I'm trying to account for it in some way, shape, or form. And an 8,700 James Harden, I don't want to be building it out with like a 9,700 Anthony Edwards and then have to leave 1,000 on the table. So I'm doing some different swaps with the Minnesota LAC game, but I'm building out a nice share of 8,700 James Harden. If you get one of Kawhi or Paul George out, that is going to be a phenomenal tournament play.
So as we were talking through the cash game question before, I brought up Giannis, and I did think you made a very good point, better than any point that I made, that Tatum is so popular, might as well just play him in cash games. But that also made me think, as we're approaching nuke of the night, why is Giannis so low owned today? Like, people,
great question.
I get that people really want to play SGA with Jalen Williams out. People really want to play Jason Tatum with all the players who are sitting for the Boston Celtics. But we've got a slate with basically unlimited value where Giannis is now projected for about 10% ownership. And that simply should not be the case, because maybe on a points per dollar sense, because they're cheaper, SGA points per dollar projects better than Giannis. Tatum points per dollar projects better than Giannis. But I don't know how much that's going to matter when we have so much value on this slate that the raw points just might matter more if we're trying to get to all of these really, really cheap 3K guys. And, plays like Case and Wallace are coming into play. Now we've got Luke Cornett we're rostering Sam Hauser today. So I'm going to go with Giannis. If people are just not going to pay up for the player with the highest overall fantasy point projection on a slate with unlimited value, give me Giannis.
I'm so here for it. Giannis, I currently have 34% of. So that is no joking matter. For me, I was just going to the guy that I have the most of relative to his ownership. I have 26% James Harden. He is 1% owned here at the moment. Obviously, there are going to be things that change. You have to be building out lineups knowing that there's going to be news, but it's really hard to get up to Giannis without pre-building him into lineups. So that's a phenomenal shout out. I am there with you. I also love Dame in this spot for what it's worth, 8,900. I know that, he's projected for 16 less fantasy points, but again, 8,900 for him, 8,700 for him. And then Ant now at 9,700, which is probably appropriate, north of 30% usage guaranteed without Karl Anthony Edwards out there every single night. But love the shout out for Giannis.
And one other nice added addition to Giannis. You know what the easiest way? What?
Lamar Stevens out. Great.
I thought it was going to be something like super impactful.
Oh, that's impactful to some extent. GG Jackson just, how many guys do they have? Is Wenyan Gabriel going to be in a uniform tonight?
Yes, I believe he will be.
Okay, cool. So Lamar Stevens out. Do we get John Conchar news? Yeah, available to play. There it is. Okay. And Jordan Goodwin's out there too. All right. So that helps having both of them in. Continue on.
So I was going to say the easiest way to give us flexibility for the Clippers and Minnesota situation, you play Giannis. If you got Giannis in lineups, it is going to be so easy to turn him into potential players from Minnesota or the Clippers. So I think that's a reasonable way. And I mean, also the game highest total on the slate, or second highest total on the slate, 236.5. So is also expected to be an up and down game. There are a number of players that do project fairly well outside of Giannis. You mentioned Dame as somebody to get to. I've got some Fox exposure. I've got some Sabonis exposure. I'm well situated to make any kind of pivots depending on what happens to Minnesota and the Clippers. And I just don't think a lot of the field is. If we get that scenario, like you had mentioned, if we do see Kawhi Leonard and Paul George both sit, everybody's going to want to play James Harden in that scenario. But what percentage of the field is going to have the flexibility to get to James Harden? I don't think it's going to be very much, considering the current projected ownership for Minnesota, for the Clippers, and only, barely over 10% for Giannis. So another little added benefit there.
Love it.
Got a couple of super chats that have come in. This one is from Gray. He says, is Cornett and Tillman different on FanDuel since one center spot? Cornett is still Cornett is a super strong option no matter what site you're playing. I'm playing on FanDuel, DraftKings, Owner's Box, whatever the hell other sites still exist now. Yeah, Luke Cornett is going to be a great play on all of them.
Yeah, here's the thing. There is definitely a chance that, that you get a starting lineup that ends up not having him in it, where it ends up being Xavier Tillman. But no matter what, Luke Cornett is going to be cheap and playable there, and you're able to swap between the two of them pretty easily. So I don't really have to think about it twice.
We just got the very lengthy Grizzlies injury report. I cannot wait for the day that the Grizzlies are not able to
God.
fit their injury report on a single tweet, where they have to go, our injury report, part 1 of 2. It is coming sooner rather than later.
Hear ye. All attendance, pull out the scroll.
It is going to be long.
Oh my God.
The gif of SpongeBob opening up, what is it, his shopping list, and just goes on and on and on. That's the Grizzlies injury report right now.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Great. Go play Luke Cornett on FanDuel for sure. Race Fan 22. Any love for Tyus Jones? 6,200 left in utility for DK. Let's see. 6,200 left in utility on DK. Who's the best?
He's the one guy from Washington that I'm playing quite a bit of. I have a little bit of Corey Kispert. I'm right around 12%. I have a little bit of Kyle Kuzma. I have 15%. Again, I'm backloading some lineups. But Tyus Jones, I was well north of that coming into this show.
I think the guy you want to be going with is, yeah, you know what? I'll say Tyus Jones there. He's not the highest priority in the world for me on this slate, but if it's a utility spot, last man in, he is the player that projects the best for us. And it's not like he's not by any means a poor points per dollar play. We haven't projected fairly well, 33.5 fantasy points. So I'm good with Tyus Jones. There's also Santi Aldama, somebody you could consider now that Lamar Stevens is out. It doesn't massively change the expected output for Aldama. It does definitely secure his minutes a little bit. So Tyus Jones or Santi Aldama, those are the two guys I would be considering their Race Fan 22. But yeah, I think Tyus Jones is a very serviceable option in that price range. Official Chris Presto channel says, hey guys, if Kawhi and Paul George are out, would you play Amir Coffey? I only have him in one lineup, but may play more of him tonight. Is that somebody who'd be a consideration for you in the event that all the Clippers, well, not all the Clippers, but the 2 Clippers stars on the injury report are not able to play?
No. I know he played 30 minutes. I know that he smashed last time out. The guy is not a good fantasy point per minute producer, 0.61. Obviously, his price tag at 4,100, if you put up 39.5, you would very much want that, nearly 10xing it. But like, come on, this is a 0.61 fantasy point per minute guy. I would be far more inclined to play other dudes on the Clippers, just not necessarily Amir Coffey. He basically is a corner 3 specialist. That's like his heat chart. Like when you look at where he's on the floor, he just sits in the corner. And hey, if he's getting a lot of open looks, awesome. But like wings against Minnesota, not necessarily my favorite thing to be targeting here. You could definitely fall into some shares if you knew that news. But again, that's going to be like a very, very low priority out of that game if that news breaks that way.
Starting lineup for the Rockets, Jabari Smith Jr. starting at center and Eamon Thompson slotting into the starting lineup.
There you go.
Was expected. Nothing that really changes. This was, I assume, what you were anticipating for the lineup as well?
Yeah, I thought there was a chance Jeff Green could end up being him, but I thought Thompson was going to be the guy who got the start. I like him a little bit. 4,900 for Eamon Thompson. He's a 1.1 fantasy point per minute dude who I've got him in for 28 minutes. I feel like we had him under projected, but I think we were kind of splitting the difference on, we had Jeff Green starting. He was at 29 minutes in our projections. So yeah, I mean, Eamon Thompson, I had 26% of, I built out 150. I'm only going to be playing my top 25 out of this here. So again, take it with a grain of salt, but Eamon Thompson, definitely somebody that I liked over the field. I don't think he's going to be lacking popularity now that he's starting at 4,900.
Mr. Cool Cam has left us a question in Discord. He wants to know, who are 3 must plays on FanDuel? So I'm going to rerun FanDuel lineups in a second as well for the Grizzlies news, although that's not going to change the players that I would consider the must roster type guys on FanDuel, which I am going to be going with, for FanDuel purposes, Jason Tatum. So here's what, Jason Tatum is great on both sites, but particularly on FanDuel, here's what separates Jason Tatum from all the other real studs on the slate. He is 10K. Giannis is 11.9. SGA is 11.3, so a lot more expensive on FanDuel relative to DK. Wemby 11.4. Sabonis 11.1. So I'm going to go Jason Tatum as one of them when you consider that he's just so much cheaper than the other spend-up options on the slate. So I'm going to go Tatum, Luke Cornett, and still Sam Hauser on FanDuel. So 3 Celtics, but that's the guys who I think you should be building around over there. Do you have lineups built out for FanDuel or just DK?
Just DK today.
Okay, all good. So those are the answers. You guys aren't getting anything else. Riding with me. But Eric's going to agree with me anyway on those.
I very much agree with you.
Been snapping added me, but oh, here we go. I found it was there was a question he had asked above. He wants to know, how do we think we should be playing lineups in the lineup generator today? I'm going to say contrarian. I normally wouldn't say it on a slate of this size, but there's so much value. You're still going to get somewhat chalky lineups because of how good the value plays are looking. So, lineup generator, I'm going to say go contrarian today. And it's still, once again, going to give you some of the best overall value plays on the slate. They're going to be popular. Maybe it'll mix in one or two kind of contrarian looking options there. So I'm going to say contrarian. What would you answer for this?
Yeah, I like the contrarian setting more on a day like today where there's good chalk and it's still going to show up in those lineups, but we want to rotate around some different pieces because you're looking at some duplication. Obviously, if you're playing the $15, you have 23K entries as opposed to 104K that we had yesterday. There isn't as much of a requirement. You saw how many dupes there were. As you start getting closer to the top, there are a lot of duplications where there's some overlap based on projections, but I think you're probably good to go by just lowering it down, going to the contrarian setting, ramping up. I mean, that's basically you saying, hey, more randomness, and that's probably a good way to do this slate.
And for anybody else who wants to sign up for the lineup generator, it is the most cost-effective package that we have here over at Stokastic.com, less than $15. It's going to build lineups for you. But also, if you want to customize those lineups, you could build lineups like Bin, Snap, and Ask. You can make either chalky, contrarian, or balanced lineups. But then after it spits out the lineups, you could alter them. We've got drop-down menus. We could swap players out. It shows you our projections, our ownership projections. So you could change some of the players maybe you don't like in lineups. You want somebody else in the lineup, or maybe they're just somebody you really like. You can lock individual players in. If you want to sign up for the lineup generator, sign up using the link that we have below in the description box. Let's see what else we have in here. M. Grizzly says, did I hear correctly that you're completely removing the first game? Yes, I don't have any exposure to the first game on the slate. No interest in it.
I have 0 of it now as well. So when Jalen Brunson puts up 70, we'll have a nice stress-free evening.
And then Miami High Life wants to know for tournaments, how are we prioritizing the payups in GPPs? So who do you like the most on the high end?
SGA.
So there's a couple of ways to answer this question, right? Because relative to ownership, the answer is Giannis for me. Because he is projected for so low ownership that if you had 30% SGA, 30% Giannis, 30% of Jason Tatum, you're even with the field on SGA, you're underweight to the field on Tatum, and you're way overweight to the field on Giannis. So relative to ownership, the answer is Giannis. But if we're just talking about what my actual exposures are, I'm going to have a little bit more of SGA and Tatum. Those are the 3 pay-up options that I have the most interest in. SGA, Tatum, Giannis being the contrarian option. As far as ranking them, I guess I'll go Giannis 1 relative to ownership, SGA 2, Tatum 3. It's not even a knock on Tatum. It's just he's in 50% of the field's lineups. You got him in half of your lineups, and you're just neutral to him.
I have nothing to add.
Jetty 76. Favorite player to lock on the NBA lineup generator for DK20 max? I would say Kornet.
Yeah, if you're going to lock one, I would say Sam Hauser. I think there's enough at power forward / center. I mean, you brought up Giannis, another guy in that game, Domantas Sabonis. I think I would be inclined to say Hauser because of the positionality rather than Kornet, but it'd be pretty darn close.
Got a super chat here from Thomas Ryan. He wants to know, who are we getting to the most in each position on DraftKings? Yeah, so let's start with point guard. And Eric, who is the point guard that you're finding showing up in your lineups the most?
Amen Thompson.
That for me, I'm going to say SGA here because I want to use Cason Wallace at shooting guard. So SGA point guard, Cason Wallace shooting guard. How about yourself at shooting guard?
Amen Thompson, second up would be Cason Wallace.
Small forward, that is going to be Sam Hauser for me.
Sam Hauser.
Power forward, I'm going to go Giannis.
See, that's beautiful that you're taking that large of a stand. I like that. It's Tatum for me right now.
And then center Kornet. I just don't know how to get away from Kornet. Unless the starting lineup comes out and it's not him, they go Tillman or they go with some other lineup.
But then you just pivot to Tillman for 200 less, and you're still going to get minutes for Kornet, same way that you still got minutes for Hauser yesterday. And Kornet can be a flamethrower from time to time. That's just a 10% usage. I don't think I'm as optimistic if he doesn't start as opposed to other spots, but Very much inclined to play some Luke Cornett as well.
There we go. So that is our most roster players at each position. Thank you for the super chat, Thomas Ryan. And then K Sizzle has got his normal question for you there, Eric. With all the news, anything that's standing out to you over on pick 6?
Yeah, there's a lot of news. So I want to see what they added to the pick set, because I am backloading my pick 6 lineups over there quite heavily. That's kind of what I always do. Again, people don't swap enough over there, and you're allowed to swap your props. You're allowed to have different stances based on news, how it comes out. But I want to see if they added anything for Minnesota LAC. Yeah, here you go. So you brought up before James Harden, 15.5 points. If you get one of like either of them out, being Paul George or Kawhi Leonard, 15.5 points for James Harden, smash. You got Jaden McDaniels, your guy there, 11.5 points. If you get Anthony Edwards or Kyle Anderson out, that's probably a smash there as well. Terrence Mann sitting at 8.5 points. You could go to the entire PRA of Zubats in the event that, you know, you end up getting both of those other guys out. He closed at like 24, 25.5, I believe, PRA on Sunday as I was tracking that. Mike Conley, 19.5. There are opportunities to just react to whatever that news is. And then the one thing I do like, 44.5 is the PRA for Domantas Sabonis. I'm playing him a little bit in DFS, but I do like less. He's sitting 43.5 across the industry elsewhere with a little bit of favoritism going towards the under. So 44.5 PRA Domantas Sabonis. That was from my video earlier today. I'm still sticking with that one.
Yeah, and pick 6, I would love to play it. I'm dying to, but just can't right now. Just not allowed at the moment. Saif Din says he missed nuke of the night. He wants to know who he went with. So my nuke of the night was Giannis, and just quick summary for everybody. The main reason for Giannis, we got a lot of value on the slate. He's the player who overall does project for the most fantasy points, and he's just not picking up ownership as people are going towards Tatum SGA. So I like being overweight to Giannis. Eric, your nuke of the night with a little bit of a summary as to why.
Yeah, James Harden. The guy will have an eternal amount of opportunity if you end up getting one of Kawhi or Paul George. And if you get both of them out, you're sitting on the nuts with him. 29% assist rate. I expect that to come up here. Again, no Russell Westbrook in the second unit. They could go and trim that down. But over the course of this season, with Kawhi and Paul George off the floor, James Harden is a 1.37 DraftKings point per minute producer. Mike Conley on the other side, one of the better matchups you could have. Obviously, McDaniels will be switching on to him. That's not exactly fun, but James Harden is set up to smash. Him and Norman Powell, I'd want to get to a crazy amount of if you got that news.
Next question here, and thank you for the super chat there, Saif Din. We got one from Morning Napalm. He says, would we play Jalen Green and Fred VanVleet in the same lineup together on FanDuel? It depends how many you're playing. If you're just playing one single entry lineup and you're hand building it, no, I wouldn't have Jalen Green and Fred VanVleet in that lineup together. If you're playing a large set of lineups, you know, or even 20 and they just happen to show up in one lineup together, it's not the end of the world. But yeah, one lineup, I wouldn't play them together. How about yourself?
No, one lineup. Yeah, that'd be fine. Not playing them together.
We've got a question here from Ethan7. He goes, thoughts on Jrue Holiday? Sims getting me to a lot of them, as they should. I mean, just look at the injury report for the Boston Celtics. And also keep in mind, Jrue didn't play yesterday. He sat out, so he's going to be fresher than a lot of the players. So I assume his leash for playing time is probably longer than what some other players might potentially be in this game. But yeah, it's one of these scenarios. Porzingis is out. Al Horford is out. Jaylen Brown is out. Yeah, it makes sense to be getting to Jrue Holiday considering the injury report of Boston.
Love.
And then we've got BTFU 1989 says, favorite sub 3.5K player on OKC other than Cason Wallace. If you have to roster a punt player on the Thunder, but it is not Wallace, which direction do you go?
I'm trying to play somebody on the Thunder that isn't Cason Wallace on the cheap end, would be Wiggins.
Kind of by default.
Yep. Not that I like him more or less. For me, it's just getting to whoever starts there, having a couple of shares maybe. Again, when I'm not playing 150 like yesterday, it's going to be easier for me to just say, all right, trim the fat, not have some of these ancillary pieces, especially with that. I've already backloaded lineups in a way where Minnesota, LAC, that's going to be something that I'm hoping news breaks on. But I am inclined to say Wiggins for sure. And then, yeah, if he doesn't start, then kind of allocate your money elsewhere. But Cason Wallace would be the guy if he starts, and I assume he does.
I know it's not that price range. Somebody brought it up in playback in the chat. The Black Mamba said, any chance Hayward starts? I do think
Yes,
Hayward's
there
one
is.
of the sneaky guys we could get to from OKC in this scenario, because there's no reason to say he can't start. There's no reason to say he can't come off the bench and play extended minutes. We haven't seen him on the team all that long. He hasn't gotten that role yet, but the second, well, maybe not the second, either the second or third best player on the Thunder is going to be out today. There's a reason they picked up Gordon Hayward, and he's going to play high leverage minutes for them in the playoffs. I would not be stunned if they give Gordon Hayward the start here, for the reason of seeing how does he mesh with SGA? How does he mesh with Giddey and some of these other key players like Chet, just to see what does he look like with that unit in case they want to give him extended run for the playoffs. If there's any time to gear him up for that, I do think it would be now. So Gordon Hayward, kind of an interesting tournament option. He's live to start, but I can't confidently tell you I know who's going to start for the Thunder.
I'm pretty confident it's Case and Wallace. I'd be very surprised if it wasn't. He's a guy that when they've had injuries in second halves, he's started second halves. It's happened a number of times. He's had 2 starts. I mean, Isaiah Joe was the guy that we saw start these kind of spots last season, like at the tail end, like middle March, beginning March. That was the guy that started to get sprinkled in. Yeah, I'd probably put it at like 80% Case and Wallace. I'll put it like 15% Wiggins. Gordon Hayward would be the most surprising to me, purely because it seems like the guy that they want to have coming off the bench there, him and Isaiah Joe, kind of suppressing the minutes and obviously keep him healthy. You kind of know what you're getting from Gordon Hayward come playoff time. Like, you're going to still play him to 18, 20 minutes and just hope that you run good with it. Aaron Wiggins, more likely to me than Gordon Hayward. But again, it wouldn't be like a crazy 1% type outcome.
Is he somebody you expect to get any of in tournaments, Gordon Hayward?
Nah, probably not. Probably not. 3,600, that's the other thing. Like, it's not just that he isn't the 3,200 with those guys, but like, he falls into a price point where it's like, I'd rather just find $400 in the couch cushions and get up to Cornet, get up to Hauser. Like, I don't see a reason to trying to go really crazy here and try to get to a ton of Gordon Hayward. I mean, what's his minutes high with OKC? 18, right? He hasn't exceeded 18 minutes with them. And, you know, I know he's playing low 30s with Charlotte once upon a time. If he gets the start, go ahead and fire him up in bulk, because then he's probably playing 24, and we know he can be a decent fantasy point per minute guy, 0.9 on the season here. But if he doesn't start, there's no reason to think that he's out in the middle of nowhere going to play 24, because they have Wiggins, they have Joe, they have Kenrich Williams. It's just a logjam still, and those minutes are just diluted down to, it'll be a 9-man rotation still.
Sniffs 1, 2, 3, 4 wants to know, how do we feel about Aldama and Kennard? So the Memphis Grizzlies are going to be a shorthanded team tonight, which, I mean, what does that even mean for the Grizzlies? They've been shorthanded they've been shorthanded basically since the first game of the season, because John Morant was suspended. He came back, he got hurt. So the team has been shorthanded the entire season. Santi Aldama is one of the best overall mid-range plays on the slate.
He absolutely is going to be in my lineup. Yeah, I have 30% of him right now. So like Santi Aldama.
Luke Kennard, on the other hand, that is a no for me. He actually doesn't project poorly at all. He's somebody who is going to make his way into some lines, but like, as far as I should reiterate, as far as somebody who's a priority on the slate, he's not a priority in any kind of way. Whereas Santi Aldama is.
I've been playing so much Luke Kennard, but here's the big changing point is I think with Jordan Goodwin in, you're probably going to have him play the 2. He's not going to be at the point guard spot. So like, Luke Kennard, I've been firing up. I got one good game against Brooklyn. It was like last Monday or whatever it was. That horrendous looking basketball game. We got a hot shooting night from him, but I mean, they just really aren't going to let him exceed 30 minutes. I think he's fine to get to, but I would say that I like Aldama exponentially more, not just because of what I think the opportunity is going to be for him, but I just think he gets more run in general. And I think the positionality of him at power forward, I'd rather lock that up early than lock up a little bit of this point guard shooting guard here with Luke Kennard today.
Listen to these injury reports. Just listen to this.
Absurd.
We have Anthony Edwards questionable still. Kawhi Leonard is questionable. Rudy Gobert is questionable. Paul George is questionable. Kyle Anderson is questionable. Keegan Murray is questionable. And Kyle Anderson being questionable really comes into play when you consider Edwards and Gobert are both questionable. And then you start to look at guys like, Monty Morris is questionable. Once again, wouldn't normally matter, but does matter with all the players on the injury report for Minnesota. So A great night for you guys to stick around and check out the post-lock show that Josh and I are going to be doing. We've got a guest on, and Kyle Kerms, who's going to be breaking down some extra bets for us. So go check us out over on Playback in like 30 seconds when this show ends. And also, if you haven't done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel for us over here on this side. But Eric, which injury situation do you have your eyes on the most heading into lock?
It's impossible for it not to be the entire Minnesota LAC game. There are so many ways that this plays out. One of the ways is that everybody plays, which I think is, if you told me everybody played or nobody played, I would lean towards everybody being in for this one. But you're probably going to get something to break there. And if it breaks before Boston, Utah, I'll be able to sliver off some of those shares of guys that we already have exposure to there, kind of send that into Minnesota LAC. But I feel pretty confident that some of the value we have now is sub 5K. Amin Thompson, who love getting to him. A couple of these other pieces. I think there's some good chalk that already exists. It's just trying to find some of those low-owned tournament pieces that we want to couple with them. So pay attention to Minnesota LAC, and then obviously get to more Giannis. I think we're on board with that.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, if you haven't done it, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and join us over on Playback. Jordan, spam that link. Drop it into YouTube chat. Act like the bot you are and tell people to go over and join us on Playback. So drop that in. Good NPC, Jordan. Good NPC. Guys, thank you very much for watching. About to join Josh over on Playback. See you there.